Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. We got an awesome guest today. We're going to show some love to the rhythm section. We got the one and only Jimmy Haslip, who, as you guys will learn before the end of this, is not only just a killer bass player, he's a super sweet guy. Incredibly kind, professional, like any accolade you could think. This is, you know, he'd be one of these guys, even if he sucked, he'd get gigs because he's just so freaking nice. But the fact that he's an awesome player, it's like, what? Anyway, a couple of quick announcements. I want to thank Karen Frisky from Blue Canoe for hooking us up initially. Thank you very much, Karen. Also, make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe to subscribe to the show. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and that little emoji that looks like a bell. That helps us get recommended by YouTube, and thanks for your support on that. Let me give you I could give you an hour of Jimmy's background, but real quick, Jimmy's most well known for being an amazing bassist and the founding member of the Yellowjackets, along with Robben Ford on guitar, who was on this show a while back, Russell Ferrante on keys, and Ricky Lawson on drums. He's also a very successful producer and session player. This is a small snippet of the people he's worked with. He's worked with artists like Jeff Lorber, Bobby McFerrin, Rick Wakeman, Bruce Hornsby, Michael Landau, Donald Fagen, John Schofield, Carmine Appice, right? He pronounces it Appice, I think, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Allan Holdsworth, Rod Stewart, Bruce Kulick, who was on the show a while back, Steve Pfister and Allen Hines, both those guys on here, Tommy Bolin, one of the greatest guitar players ever, Michael Penn, Gino Vannelli, which we'll talk about his work on that record, which is pretty incredible, Anita Baker, Chick Corea, Chris Bodie, Al Jarreau, Lee Rittenauer, Andy Summers, Joe Walsh, Diana Ross, Dave Mason, who is also on here, Chaka Khan, Ron Wood, and hundreds of others. He's also a member of the, if you haven't listened to this band, Jing Chi, it's Jingchi. It's Jimmy, along with Robben Ford and Vinny Colaiuta. Holy smokes. Gotta listen to those three records. They're absolutely amazing. And just to be upfront, like I said, Jimmy's done so many different things. I'm not going to come close to covering even the most significant ones. So the guys who are thinking, why didn't you talk about this? Man, I just can't. We don't have 8 hours or 20 hours. We need an entire weekend. So he's also one of my Bronx homies, which is maybe even more important than all of this. Hey, man, thank you so much for coming on the show, Jimmy. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. All right. So I hope this is the only question I'm going to ask you that you've been asked before. You kind of accidentally fell into being a professional musician. And I would love for you to share the story of how the audition for the band Captain Cook came about. It's such a cool story.
Well, let's see. You know, I played in bands all through high school, junior high school and high school. It was just a blast. And at that point, I was completely self-taught because I did play an instrument. I was a trumpet player in school, and I played in all the orchestras and big bands and concert bands, all that. I was even in a drum and bugle corps.
Cool.
And I was like, when I was in the Boy Scouts in junior high school, I became the troop bugler, actually, which was a whole nother wonderful experience as a kid, because I used to get hired by the American Legion Hall in our community to travel with them every Memorial Day to a half dozen or so cemeteries. And I would play taps.
Wow. Who would have thought that experience would come from that, right?
Oh, that was, and as a kid, I really heartfelt because I was hanging out with these veterans of war, you know, and you could tell these guys had been through some heavy shit.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, I got that, you know, and they were very kind people, and they were glad to have me around. I'd wear my little Boy Scout uniform, and they would have their uniforms, you know, whether they were in the Navy or the Army or the Air Force. And then they would shoot off like a 21-gun salute, you know. So I got to experience that. I was in all these different bands playing horn, mostly. I was not a great trumpet player. Normally I got like third and fourth trumpet part in the bands. But I was also really into athletics. So
okay. You're a big guy. I've seen photos of you. You're like the tall guy in every photo, aren't you? Right? I mean, you're
6'3".
Yeah, that's.
And as a kid, I was always the tallest kid in the class. Usually, there was also some other tall kids, but I loved sports. So every year, like starting in 6th grade, I think I played 4 or 5 team sports in school. So football, basketball, baseball, track, and lacrosse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So with that, you hang with all different people. And at one point in 7th grade, I got approached by these guys that wanted to put a band together to play at some pool parties or something. They didn't have a bass player. So they asked me if I would play bass. And I said, I thought that'd be fun. So I bought a bass with my dad. I learned like 12 songs and onward we went. So years go by. I graduate from high school. I'm in my first year at college.
Where was this?
Nassau Community College, which campus is in Nassau County in Westbury, Long Island. And it's just across a giant field from Hofstra.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I know that.
So I had aspirations to finish the 2-year classes at Nassau Community and transfer to Hofstra. And then I even had visions of, I knew that's where the New York Jets worked out.
Right.
And I had visions of trying out for the New York Jets at some point.
Really? Like tight end or something?
Linebacker.
Yeah. Holy smokes.
I was 6'3". I weighed 220, something like that in college. So probably needed to bulk up some. But regardless, I broke my leg.
Oh.
And I was in a cast, and all those aspirations kind of went by the wayside. And I was bored to tears at school. I was, of all things, a theater arts major, a music minor. And the professors were not inspired. So they were just kind of dull, and I wasn't really getting a lot of juice from them. And at a certain point, I was out one night at a bar and ran into a buddy of mine that I was in one of these high school bands. Okay. Really great guy. And he goes, and he says, "Are you still playing bass?" I said, "Well, not, sort of. Yeah, I could fool around with it." And he goes, "Listen, my cousin, you remember my cousin? He had an older cousin and who played B3 and his idol, great singer, and his idol was Ray Charles. So had a great voice. He said he's putting a band together and they need a bass player. You want to audition?" I was like, "Well, yeah, okay, I'll audition," figuring no way in hell, because at the time I was 18. Doug, who was my friend's cousin, I think was around 27 or 28. And when you're 18,
yeah, that's like,
that seems really old. Oh, that guy's really old. He's 27. I'm only 18. So, but I figured that'd be fun. So I got the number, called the number. They invited me in for an audition. At that point, I didn't smoke weed or anything, So all the guys in there were older. There was this guitar player from Floral Park named Angelo Ficara. The B3 player was a guy named Doug Peroni, and there was a drummer named Doug Dean. And that, they smoked a bunch of pot, and I was like getting contact high, going like, "Wow, this is crazy." I'm sitting here, and we played a bunch of tunes. I thought I did okay. I kind of held my own, but it was really enlightening because those guys were professional.
Yeah.
They had been doing it for a while. And it was really interesting to play with these guys who were older and much better than I was. So when it was over, I left. They said goodbye, and they said, "Look, we'll call you." So we'll be honest, we have some other guys to audition. And I just went, "Okay, yeah, totally cool. Great to meet you." I got in my car, went home. And then like about 3 days later, I got a call from the guitar player. And he said, hey, and I thought he was calling me to say, thanks for coming down, but we got another guy to do the gig. But instead he goes, well, we auditioned the other guys and you got the gig. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, you got the gig. And we start in 2 weeks. We have 3 months of gigs lined up.
Wow.
All over Long Island. And we'll send you a repertoire of tunes. I'll call you. I'll give you all the tunes to learn. I had to learn like 40 tunes.
That's a lot in 2 weeks for your first gig.
Yeah. And then we were going to have a few rehearsals, you know. So it's like, wow, okay. So I started just focusing on that. And school, you know, trying to get up in the morning. I tried to keep both things happening. But these gigs, they would start at 9 at night. And I'd play 5 shows a night. So I'd be done around 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Drive home, finally go to sleep around 3. And then I had to be up at 7 to drive to campus to go to class. And that got really old fast. And eventually I just stopped going to school. I made it through that first semester, and then I just didn't go back.
How are your folks about that?
Well, I didn't quite tell them right away because I knew they would be really pissed off about it. I kind of let it ride for a while, but then I had to tell them because I got a notice from my draft board.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I no longer had the 2S deferment.
Because you weren't in college anymore.
I wasn't in college
Holy
anymore.
shit.
So when I got that in the mail, I just sat my parents down and I told them what I'd done. And they were pissed, but they kind of got it. But now they were really worried about me going into the draft, you know.
So this is like 1970 probably? 71? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, and I was a low number. I was 100 out of 365. So,
wow.
So that's why I got the letter. I had to report to my draft board. So then I had to tell the band. I said, look, I don't know what's going to happen, but I have to go in to go do my physical and all that kind of stuff for the draft. So I'll let you know, you know. So they were really concerned. I think it happened during a break where we just didn't have any gigs for a couple of days.
And you were enjoying the experience of playing, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I was like really bummed that I had to go do this thing. So I did it. My father drove me to my local draft board, which I think was somewhere out near Patchogue or something.
God, that's got to be a tough drive as a dad.
Yeah, he left me there. And so I got on this school bus kind of thing with about 100 guys all in the bus, right? We drove to Brooklyn, Fort Buchanan. I think it's a naval base in Brooklyn, I believe. And that's where I did the physical. And, you know, had to take some written tests for IQ, and then all the different stations you had to go to check your ears, your eyes, your, you know, heart, you know, all these things. And I knew I was passing every test.
Yeah.
You know, I was an athlete for one, and you know, I knew that I was in pretty good shape, even though I had broken my leg. I was still in pretty good shape. So got to the very last test, and doctors checked certain parts of your body. I won't go into details, but one of the parts was your feet. They actually looked at your feet. That was one of the last things.
Okay. So
the guy looks at my feet, and then he's like studying something. I'm looking at him like, you know, what are you looking at? Yeah. So he says, just stay here. And he dismisses the other. There's like maybe 10 guys in a row. he dismisses the 9 guys and asks me to stay back. And he goes, "I'll be right back." So he leaves. I'm standing in the room in my underpants, by the way. That's
God, probably scared shitless.
Yeah, going like, now what? You know, so comes back with 2 other doctors. And they look at my feet, and then they go off to a corner, and they're discussing something. And I'm just standing there going like, okay, you know. So the guy comes back to me. He says, "Okay, go to that desk over there, and you're done for the day." And I said, "Okay." So I noticed while I was in that room that when they were taking you over to basic training, basically, you went off to this door on the right, and then occasionally there'd be a guy that went to the door on the left. I don't know what that was about. So I give the guy the paperwork. He looks at it and he stamps it, and he goes, "Go to the door on the left." So I look at the paperwork, and I see a new stamp on my draft card that says 1Y instead of 1A, right? And I said, "What does 1Y mean?" He says, "You're not fit for military service unless there's a national emergency. Go to the door on the left, you're dismissed." So I went, "Oh, okay." So I go to the door on the left. I get, excuse me, I get escorted to a bus, the bus I came in on. That had 100 guys on it. Now there's only 8 guys on the bus. I'm the 9th guy. And I realized, you know, all my life I've had flat feet, fallen arches. It never bothered me. I mean, I ran track and played football. It's supposed to be a hindrance for all that, but it never really bothered me. But they saw that, and they sent me home.
How relieved were you and your parents?
It was an incredible day. So I got back to the draft board. I called my father. I said, "I'm back in Patchogue. Come pick me up."
Oh,
and he goes, God. "What the hell happened?" He says, "Well, they didn't like my flat feet."
Holy smokes.
So I immediately called the band. I said, "I'm in." They didn't take me. So when's the next gig?
What? And that was Captain Cook.
That was Captain Cook, and I played with them pretty much that entire year, 1970-ish, into 71. And during that time, I got really close with the guitar player in the band, this guy Angelo. And one day we were just bored to tears with these gigs. You know, we were playing somewhere in upstate New York, and
mostly cover tunes.
All covers,
okay.
Yeah, all covers. Cool stuff, you know. Sly Stone, you know, Creedence Clearwater, funky Creedence Clearwater tunes. James Brown, you know, Wilson Pickett. You know, a lot of R&B.
Yeah,
because it's fun and people could dance to it.
Yeah.
You know? So he says to me, "I got to get out of here." It says, "It's starting to wear thin on me." And I said, "Well, you know, I got a friend in Northern California that keeps inviting me to come up there to hang. You know, is that something that you'd be interested in?" He said, "Let's do it." So we got in a Volkswagen and we drove from Long Island to Gurneyville, California.
Wow.
Took us about 7 days.
Yeah, that's
we
hell
had
of
a few
a drive.
places we stopped. Yeah.
And
that got me to California the first time. That was in 71, I guess. Yeah.
Wow, not long, right after this whole draft thing went down, not long after that. Wow.
So that's it. You know, the rest is history, and more stuff happened, obviously, but that takes you to that place. And I was still 18 going on 19 at that point, you know.
So what did you do when you got out there?
Well, it was certainly a change of pace. from being in Long Island and New York.
Yeah.
You know, we were in the sticks in Northern California. And the guy that there was a friend of mine, he played keyboards in one of the high school bands I was in, had opened a health food restaurant up there. It was a hippie community.
Right.
It was all hippies up there. It was beautiful. It was on a river called the Russian River that ran through the whole town. And this friend of mine had a log cabin that was on the fringe of a redwood forest called the Armstrong Redwoods. So every morning you get up and there's like a redwood forest there, and across this field was a river. And that's what I woke up to every morning for about 3 or 4 months, because we stayed up there for about that long.
That's beautiful.
Until we met some musicians that brought us down to San Francisco.
Okay.
And then we ended up playing with some people down in San Francisco, which in 1971 was like sort of the end of the Haight-Ashbury period. But it was still some activity.
I saw that you also made, in your bio, it said you made stops also in New Orleans, Denver, and Dallas. Were you playing music in all those places, or?
Yeah, that was after.
Okay.
That was after that. Because after I stayed up in San Francisco with my buddy Angelo for about 2 years. So
okay.
In 73, we drove back to New York to join another top 40 band.
You drove back in the same
Volkswagen.
They don't make Volkswagens like they used to.
They don't. So, and that was a funny thing, because we had been there for a couple of years and we were having a time of our lives. You know, it was really fun, a lot of cool people. You know, Angelo and I eventually moved into a house with some other musicians that was 2 blocks from Golden Gate Park.
Wow.
So we used to hang out in the park and, you know, smoke some weed.
I'm
and
sure.
Groove on for the day, you know.
Did you bump up against, like, back in the day was Bill Champlin?
No, but I saw them when I moved to Los Angeles in 75. I had heard about the Sons of Champlin.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine said, "Hey, man, I know you're into this group, the Sons of Champlin. They're playing at the Troubadour. You want to go?" And I said, "Absolutely." So we got tickets, and I saw the Sons of Champlin at the Troubadour. And the guy that knocked my socks off was the guitar player, a guy named Terry Haggerty.
I had Terry on here, man. He's you know what he does?
Badass.
Speaking of weed, he is a weed like. No, but he grows it. He's like what is that? Like a weed botanist or something like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That's his thing now. When he's not playing guitar, he's a well-known consultant in the area for, like, apparently back in the day, he put away a bunch of seeds from all over the world. And so he's like,
wow,
Dr. Weed out there. Yeah. Terry Haggerty. Yeah. Hell of a player.
Serious cat. You know?
Yeah.
And of course I loved Bill Champlin. And many years later, I actually did some session work with Bill.
Yeah.
Great. So yeah, I mean, so I got back to New York, played in this top 40 band for a while. And then I got a call from a drummer that I jammed with out in Long Island, who was down in New Orleans, and said he was in this rock band doing covers, Hendrix and early Fleetwood Mac, you know, all kinds of stuff, you know, some Cream tunes and all that. So he invited me to come down there and play in that band. And I went down to New Orleans, and I ended up staying down there for 2 years, playing around with different bands.
When you did all these excursions, was it more for, like, the adventure at the time, because you were young and, like, no obligations, or was it more like, hey, I need to further my career, or a combination of both, maybe?
It's a combination of all that. It's like getting out of, you know, where I grew up, which was great. But,
yeah,
I knew that place like the back of my hand. It's like, what else is out here? You know, I was interested to see other things. So New Orleans was spectacular. Dangerous, but spectacular. And I had quite an interesting experience for the 2 years I lived there. I played in a couple of different bands. You know, met a lot of really cool people. And that when I was down there, well, that was the excursions that ended up happening. I ended up doing some gigs with these guys I was playing with in New Orleans, in Texas. So I ended up in Dallas for a little while.
Okay.
That was interesting. Then went back to New Orleans. And then at one point we ended up, the drummer that we were playing with was from Colorado. So we ended up driving from New Orleans up to Denver. And we lived up there for a couple of 2-3 months, did a couple of gigs, met some local musicians from that area, but then ended up going back to New Orleans. And at that point in time, it's when I bumped into Carmine Appice. So
in New Orleans.
In New Orleans. And he said, "What the hell are you doing down here?"
And you knew him from the Vanilla Fudge up in Long Island.
Yeah, I jammed with him on Long Island. He had a house in the town I grew up in.
Okay.
Huntington, Long Island.
Huntington. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I went to this bar there one time.
There was a ton of bars. There was more bars in Huntington than most college towns, and there was no college. And
yeah, what the hell was it called? All I know is it was very dangerous because I never heard of this. Growing up in the city, it was name your own price drink.
Oh, like, wow.
How the hell are these guys going to make any money with a bunch of college kids?
Wow.
Yeah, right. How does that work? I know, but it was named. So I remember just getting like whatever I was drinking at the time.
I'll give you $1.
Yeah. Like give me 4, you know, like it was Huntington. That's so funny. Well, beautiful town, really pretty town. Yeah.
It's got its own, you know, history. You know, Walt Whitman was born there.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. No.
Nathan Hale was hung there.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah. He's where he said, "I regret that I have only one life to give to my country." So, yeah. And then the British hung the guy. So there's actually a little area of Huntington that's called Hale Site.
Oh, dedicated to where he was hung. Yeah,
that's where they hung him.
Wow.
So
you met Carmine down in New Orleans, and he said, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah, and I said, "Well, I'm just trying to make a living." And he gave me his phone number in LA, and he said, "Come to LA and I'll hook you up." And I said, "Okay, I'll think about that."
And you hadn't played with him at that point. You just knew him as musical peer.
No, I had jammed with him.
Okay, you had. All right.
I jammed with him out in Long Island.
Okay.
He had a house in my hometown. So I met him back in the day there, jammed with him at his house. I can't even remember who else was part of that jam. I think my friend Angelo was.
Okay.
I brought in my friend Angelo over, because great guitar player, who was at the time studying with Pat Martino.
Oh, okay.
And Carmine was interested in fusion.
Okay.
So that's what we went over there and jammed in his house, and he was totally cool. So then years later, I run into him in New Orleans.
Yeah. How wild is that?
Very, very crazy. So ended up renting a car, a one-way rental, so you could drive it and drop it off. Dropped it off in Los Angeles. Got on a phone booth and called Carmine, and he invited me up to his house. So I went up there and hung out with him for a couple of months. And then the next thing I knew, he was working on a record. And I told you before that I ended up in the studio with him and Max Middleton.
That is so crazy. Was Max Middleton even back then?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was playing his ass off too. And I was a huge fan of it. I was in awe because I loved Blow by Blow. I loved the Jeff Beck record. So there I was playing with him. So we did this record, which is been released years ago by Carmine called V8.
Okay.
That's the name of the record. And it's, you know, it's dated. I mean, we did this in 1975. So
now let me ask you this. All during this time, you're self-taught, or were you taking lessons? Like,
no, I took some lessons, but predominantly self-taught. Yeah.
Did you learn theory on your own as well?
Some of it, but I did spend probably a month or so with a teacher on Long Island who got me going on some like basic theory, you know, like the diatonic system, and showed me some piano stuff. He had me woodshedding on some melodic stuff with trombone books. You know, it's all bass clef. So,
okay.
So that was an interesting angle to, you know, introduce me to some theory in that sense. And then, you know, that kind of got me going. But also, this guitar player I mentioned, Angelo Ficara, he was studying with Pat Martino, and then he was giving me lessons.
Okay, so will further your education musically then.
Yeah, because I was doing gigs with him, and then during the day, like we do a 3-week run in you know, in Florida somewhere in the Panhandle. Some club would hire us for 3 weeks.
Okay.
So we play 6 nights a week, 5 shows a night, and then we have 1 day off. And then
so that was just so much woodshedding that it was like.
And during the day, you know, you wake up at 10:30 in the morning or something, get a cup of coffee, and then you're not going to show up to the gig until like 8 o'clock at night. So you have the whole day. So I would just shed. I'd sit in my room and shed hours.
All right.
And sometimes I'd get together with Angelo in his room, and he'd show me some stuff, and he'd talk to me about some theoretical things. And, you know, so it was like being in school in the day, and at night you do the gig.
And so you got to put into place and probably do a lot of experimentation when you're playing 30 sets a week. That had to be great tuition.
Oh, it's incredible. And I could experiment. I mean, there was a limit to what I could experiment with, you know, like, you know, in the middle of It's Only Just Begun by the Carpenters. I'm not going to start playing all these crazy riffs. You know, you got to play the. So I, you know, but there were spots, you know, because the band would actually jam on some things, you know, like if we were doing a tune like a Creedence Clearwater tune, Down on the Corner,
right?
You know,
yeah.
All of a sudden the solo section would happen, but it would open up. So it would be open until the guy cued the next section. So you could kind of experiment with some jammy kind of stuff, you know, in there. So you had to pick and choose your spots, but it was, the whole thing was revolving around education and becoming a better musician.
So you were very deliberate in this. It wasn't just like, hey, we're playing gigs. You were deliberate in furthering your abilities as much as.
Yeah, I was surrounded by these older guys, you know, who were taking it seriously.
Okay.
You know, so they set the precedence. You know, like, you know, I'll even say, you know, even in life experiences, it was incredible to be around these guys because they were much older, and they, you know, they were, you know, 10 years ahead of me.
That's a lot when you're, like you said, when you're 18, 19, 20 years old. Yeah.
And they already experienced a lot of stuff that I was brand new to me, you know? So, and I had the whereabouts to just kind of observe and learn, you know?
So it might be an awkward question. Were you always like that? Like it sounds like you actually had the wherewithal to almost say to yourself, I need to shut up and pay attention here.
Yeah.
How did that's pretty like awesome.
Well,
no, I mean, 20 years old, my head was up my ass. Probably 30 years old, my head was up my ass. That's pretty like together.
Well, I appreciate that, but that's where I was at. And I was like, I knew I was in this very interesting scenario with these older guys that have been doing this for a while I was like in high school. They were out doing gigs and experiencing life. I was in the bubble of being in high school, with cheerleaders and
yeah, sure.
and all of a sudden I'm out of there, and it's like, holy shit, there's all this other stuff that's happening. So yeah, I took it serious, and even with that, the keyboard player Doug, eventually at one point, he got heavily into transcendental meditation with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and he approached me and he said, "Hey, you want to check out a seminar?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I went to the seminar. And I got interested in it, so I got initiated. I got a mantra, and I started meditating, on top of that, which was a whole nother kind of, it's metaphysical, spiritual path kind of thing. And that was enlightening,
Did you stick with that?
I still meditate. I still have the mantra, and I meditate when I feel like I'm getting a little stressed out, I'll meditate. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And I got, and through the years now, that was 18. I'm 69 now. So yeah. I've been through a lot of things, and I've worked with a lot of different people, including, you mentioned Robben Ford. Okay. So Robben's Buddhist.
Right. Yeah.
I've been around a lot of stuff like that, a lot of spiritual enlightenment type of path with people. And I actually, at one point, I started reading a lot of different things, like the Bhagavad Gita, which is very spiritual readings, Buddhist readings, and the Yogananda, Michael Franks, who I produced four of his records, and I spent a lot of time with Michael Franks. You know him at all?
No, I don't. Sorry.
He's this really cool singer. He had a deal on Warner Brothers, and I don't know how many records he has out. Tommy LaPuma used to produce them.
Okay.
But at a certain point, Jeff Lorber was producing them. Jeff produced some of his more successful work, I think. I think Tommy LaPuma produced some really successful things. But at a certain point, we had the same manager. This gentleman named Gary Borman. He managed the Yellowjackets, and he managed Michael Franks. And at one point, he asked us if we would go out and be Michael Franks' band.
Oh, okay.
As he's a singer, right? So we said, that'd be cool. So we went out with them. We did this whole tour all over Europe, I think some US dates, and even some dates in the Far East, which I'll always remember because I think for some reason something got canceled and we had to remake the gig. And I remember leaving my apartment in LA here, getting on a plane, flying to Bangkok,
in Thailand,
which I had never been to, arriving there like in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. or something, and in the dark, driven to a hotel, and then, the different hours, just kind of wired and like going, what the heck? And finally going to sleep, but then waking up and going, where am, like one of those things like, where am I, and opening the curtains, and there was a Chinese junk boat floating down this river.
That's wild.
I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And then doing a sound check that day, doing a gig in front of like a couple of thousand Thai people. Then that night, going to a night market, which was insane.
That must be awesome.
And actually, there was a guy there that we knew that lived there, and he took us to one of these like armed forces bars where they had naked women dancing in the bar. And we were just sitting there going like, this is too out, you know? So we asked if we could leave, because then, you know, the women were like coming over and asking us to buy them Cokes, you know? And we were like, because that's just a startup conversation, you know?
Yeah, that's their thing. Yeah, me love you long time.
Yeah, we love you long time. And Russ Ferrante and I just went, you know, we got to leave now. You're very nice, and we wish you a beautiful night. But
thanks, but no thanks.
And then we went back to the hotel and then got in a car, back on an airplane, flew back to Los Angeles. And the next thing I knew, I was back in my apartment in Los Angeles. And I go, what just happened?
Holy smokes.
It was hard to even wrap my head around what happened. But we did the makeup gig with Michael Franks. So
wow.
Yeah.
I want to ask you. We could speak for hours, but I want to ask you about.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going off on these.
No, it's great. No, I just thought it's phenomenal. I don't want you to run out of gas.
I got a lot of gas.
All right, good.
Not from food either. So
that's okay too. Hey, I don't judge. I'm going to talk about artists that you've worked with. If you could talk about, Jimmy, how did you wind up first connecting with them? And then if you have a cool or interesting story about your experience. And let's start with the guy who I think is one of the greatest guitar players of all time, Tommy Bolin.
Okay. So that was 1976. Yeah. So I had been in town for about a year and a half at that point.
In LA.
In LA. So I had worked with Carmine. I actually did some really cool demos with Mark Stein.
Okay.
Studio, which was hopefully going to be a record, but that never quite came to fruition. But it was great hanging with Mark. So at a certain point, you know, I mean, I wasn't overflowing with gigs at that time because I was still new in town and meeting people. So I was doing demos, sometimes even for free, you know, they had low budget. But sometimes you get, you know, $40 or something, you know, so it was enough to keep.
And a potential contact for a second. Yeah, that's
something else could happen, you know. You know, so one day I was in my apartment. I was living in Marina del Rey in this apartment, and I heard music. And I was just sitting around. I didn't have anything going on at the time, but I heard some music. So I wandered over to where the music was, and there was an apartment that had the window open, door open. There was some guys in there, and they were jamming on something. And guy looked at me, and they stopped, and they said, "Hey, what's happening?" I said, "Hey, I live across the way here. I heard the music, so I just thought I'd come by." And they said, "Yeah, you know, we're just learning some tunes. We got this gig, but we don't have a bass player."
Holy shit. Magic. That's music to your ears right there, man.
And I said, "Hey,
oddly enough,
you know, if I should be so bold, but I'm a bass player." And they said, "You kidding?" I said, "No, go get your bass. Come on over." So I went, okay. So I went back to the apartment, got my bass, went over there, started playing with these guys, and they had a gig. So I ended up playing a couple of weeks with these guys. And it was a kind of a crazy gig. It was in a motorcycle hang bar.
Oh.
It was a gang called the Heathens.
All right.
And they were all these, you know, looking like, you know, Hell's Angels type guys. So, but before, I always remember before the first night of the gig, the drummer said, "Okay, whatever you do, don't fraternize with these people.
Oh yeah.
Don't hit on their girlfriends.
Yeah, key thing.
They'll kill you, you know." Yeah. So I said, okay. So I just started doing this gig, and one of the songs that we had to learn, and we probably played it a half a dozen times in the night, was "Born to Be Wild." So
of course,
so we play that. So after about a week and a half or 2 weeks, we're on a break. I'm at the bar, and some of these girls were like hitting on us, but I was just kind of twiddling my thumbs and acting like
Yeah.
I know nothing, see nothing, you know. So I'm standing at the bar, and the bartender comes up to me and he goes, "Your name Jimmy?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Phone call." So I went, "Okay." So I went in the hallway there by the bathroom. There's a phone booth, right? Pick up the phone. I went, "Hello?" He said, "Jimmy, it's Mark. It's Mark Stein."
Stein. Okay.
Yeah. I said, "Holy shit, how'd you get this number?" He goes, "Oh, you know, I called around. I got the number. You were playing here. Listen, Tommy Bolin's looking to audition bass players. You want to audition?"
Holy.
I said, "Sure." So he said, "Okay, can you come by tomorrow," whatever it was. I said, "Okay." So I hung up. Next day or so, I went to the audition, and there was Tommy and Mark. And at the time, it was Tommy's brother on drums.
Okay.
And this girl named Norma Jean Bell on saxophone. And I played a few tunes, and Tommy looked at me and said, "You're hired."
Wow.
And he said, "Let's continue rehearsing. We'll learn all the songs. And next week, we're flying to Denver, and we're playing Mile High Stadium, opening for Gary Wright, the Dreamweaver, Steve Miller, and Peter Frampton."
What a show.
Yeah. So I went from playing in a motorcycle bar to playing in front of 60,000 people at Mile High Stadium.
Wow.
With Tommy Bob. It was my first gig.
What was he like? I mean, as far as just as a human being, his music was just so incredible.
He was a wonderful person. Obviously, you know, there was some things going on with him, you know, and he was a rock star. He was, you know, I actually was blown away by the whole thing because I was already a fan of his with a band he was in called Zephyr.
Yeah, I figured you were going to say that.
So
yeah.
I knew about Zephyr, and then to be driving to an audition that for him was, you know, really exciting for me. I was nervous, but I was excited to play with him. So I knew about Zephyr. Then, you know, he took Joe Walsh's place in James Gang, and then he played. Then he got a solo deal. His first record was on Nemperor, and I knew that record. And that was with a big cast of people, with Narda Michael Walden, with David Sanborn. You know, Stanley Sheldon was his bass player, who happened to be playing bass with Peter Frampton, I believe. When we opened, I got to meet Sheldon. You know,
that's cool.
I got to meet Stanley Sheldon on that gig. So yeah, I mean, he was great. He was really wonderful. He had a great sense of humor. He was a great musician. He had really cool tunes. The band was a blast to play with. Eventually, Johnny Bolin was let go. He went on to go play with Black Oak, Arkansas.
That was a train wreck of a band too. Didn't they get like, wasn't it like the worst record contract in the history of music?
I don't know any of those details, but I knew they had some records out. And they were
great hits. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think they got really screwed.
But the drummer that took his place was a drummer I had seen months prior to me joining Tommy's band. I saw him in a small club here in Los Angeles called the Starwood, and he was playing with Jean-Luc Ponty.
Wow. So he must have been a monster.
And he was a monster. And he played on my favorite Jean-Luc Ponty record, which is called Imaginary Voyage.
Is that one with Enigmatic?
Well, that was the record after Enigmatic Ocean.
Yeah, that's
So there I was now in Tommy's band, and a new drummer comes in, and it's this guy Mark Cranny, who I had just seen with Jean-Luc Ponty, that I was in awe of. and then we ended up on tour, you know, and Mark Stein left as well.
Mark's, just for people, because Jimmy's mentioned, Mark Stein was the lead singer for Vanilla Fudge.
Right. And the B3, he played B3.
Right.
Yeah. So Mark left and was replaced by a guy named Max Gronenthal, who is also known as Max Carl. Max Carl at a certain point was in 38
Special. Yeah.
And wrote this song, a hit song for them. Second Chance was the name of the song. But I played in a band with Mark after Tommy Bolin. And of course that band with Max on keyboards, Mark on drums, myself, Norma Jean Bell, we were opening for Jeff Beck and the On Hammer group.
No way.
Yeah. And that's when Tommy passed away. Yeah, we were in Miami.
Oh man.
And Tommy passed away in Miami, which was heartbreaking to say the least.
Yeah.
And then I was asked to be a pallbearer at his funeral, which was really, that was a rough day because I had just met weeks prior to his passing. I met his mom and dad. And they were so sweet. His aunt and a bunch of his, I think his aunts and stuff, because we played in his hometown, Sioux City, Iowa.
Yeah. Wow. That's got to be just being a pallbearer in general. There's no like prior history in your life that allows you to figure out how do you frame that? How do you, work through that, get your arms around that whole thing sort of.
Funny enough, as solemn and sad and horrible as that whole experience was, I don't tell a lot of people this, but I think Tommy got me a gig that day.
Really?
Yeah. Thinking, because I was sitting, I think their family was Armenian, and I think part of the funeral memorial services, they gather, the family gathers with friends and anyone that was at the funeral, and they have like a feast, in honor of the deceased. So they invited us all to this community center, and it was just lavishly decorated with all this wonderful food, and people just hung out. And I personally had no appetite at that point, so I think I just had a cup of coffee.
Weird how different cultures celebrate death, man.
Yeah.
It's always interesting.
I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it, but I couldn't sit there and eat a plate of food.
It is cool. It's better, like, because what's the other option? You sit there and get hammered and drink yourself into a coma and like become more depressed. I mean, even like you see like these cultures where they burn the body and they have this whole. Yeah. It's just interesting to see all these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, or living in New Orleans, I saw a number of funeral dirges.
Yeah.
With a band. Mm-hmm. And a guy with an umbrella dancing, and it's
pretty
heavy.
Wild. Yeah.
So I believe, I was sitting there with my cup of coffee, and I didn't really notice anyone else that was at the funeral other than the family, and the other pallbearers were Max Gronenthal, Max Carl, and Mark Cranny were also pallbearers. But I was sitting there alone with my coffee, and this guy walked up to me and he said, "You're the bass player, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Hey, can I get your number?" I said, "Sure." And so I wrote down my number, gave it to him. I didn't recognize him until this guy walked over to say hello. It was Joe Walsh.
Holy crap.
And the guy that asked me for the number was Joe Vitale.
The drummer. Wow.
So, I left there thinking, wow, that's cool. But I didn't expect
No, yeah, but it's not like you're not thinking, oh, I hope I get a gig while I'm at this funeral today.
No.
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't think any of that
yeah, of
until
course.
about a week and a half or 2 weeks later. I got a phone call from some guy, and I picked up the phone. I said, hello. And he goes, you're Jimmy Haslip? And I said, yes. He goes, I got your number from Joe Vitale, and we want to get you down to a session. It's at the record plant. And when you get down here, I'll tell you more about it. But be here at 7:00 in the evening, whatever. I knew where the record plant was. And I said, okay. So I show up there, and this guy.
This is in LA.
In LA, yeah, at the record plant.
Yeah.
So he escorts me into this room. And when I look out into the room, I see Joe Vitale. He's on a drum set, and standing in front of him is Graham Nash.
Wow.
So I go, okay. And then I look over and I see Stephen Stills. So I go, hi, how you doing? And, they bring me into the room. I plug into an amp, and they start teaching me a tune. And I record a couple of tunes with Graham Nash, Steve Stills, and Joe Vitale. David Crosby wasn't around. He was occupied.
Yeah, probably in jail.
No, he wasn't in jail.
No.
He was in the facility, but he wasn't showing his face.
Man, did you see there's a documentary? Did you see that?
Yeah.
Oh, those guys were scathing with each other, man. That was real.
Too bad.
It was real bad. But it was interesting, that part at the end when they come back and they play with Neil, and everybody says, how come you didn't play any CSN songs? And Neil said, well, in the music business, songs are your currency. I am the one with the songs now. Which was very blunt, but very true. It's like, hey, because they got nothing new and I do.
Right.
And I was like, okay, fair enough. Whatever. Yeah.
Let it be.
Yeah. Right. Whatever.
So anyway, I ended up on a couple of CSN records.
That's amazing, man.
And I always, in the back of my mind, thought Tommy hooked me up.
Wow. That's
and many years later, I actually did a session with Joe Walsh.
Yeah. What was that like?
That was really great. That was a crazy bunch of events strung together. It was we were working on I put a band together at one point with Robben Ford, Mike Landau, another great guitar player, and a drummer named Gary Novak.
Yep, great drummer.
So the four of us had a band. We did a record.
God, that had to be that's an incredible band, man.
It was a fun band. We did our first record at Mike's house, Mike Landau's house. That was simply called Renegade Creation. Okay. Then the second record, we hooked up. Robben actually hooked us up. He called me at one point and said, hey, I ran into this guy at an airport who recognized me and asked me if I would want to play to raise money for his museum. And he was a big fan. And Robben said, I don't know who this guy is. I said, well, what's his name? And he goes, Paul Allen.
Oh, from Microsoft.
Yeah. And I said, that's Paul Allen from Microsoft.
That's so funny.
Really? He owns a museum? I said, yeah, he owns the Experience Museum in Seattle. It's dedicated to Jimi Hendrix. And Robert goes, wow, well, that's cool. So I told him I'd be interested to do this. And he said, well, I wouldn't want it to go, I wouldn't want you to play and not get compensated. So I can give you some free time in one of my studios.
Oh, okay.
And I said, wow, well, that's cool. So what did he offer you? And he goes, well, I thought he was just going to offer me a couple of days, but he offered me 2 free weeks.
Wow.
And I went, well, maybe we could do that and do the next Renegade Creation record. And he goes, perfect. So
Wow.
we hooked that up, and we ended up in this Paul Allen recording studio, which was under the radar because it was in a residential area.
Was that in Seattle or was that in LA?
No, in LA.
Okay, interesting.
So it's this facility in LA, but it's in a neighborhood.
That's wild.
And it was we couldn't talk about it. We had to sign a non-disclosure document before we went in. Every day to the studio, there was a security guard there, and we had to sign this paper that we wouldn't talk about the studio or anything in the studio. Because
that's wild.
All this stuff is artwork. This is valuable stuff in there, and we didn't want to talk about it. So,
and this was built under the underground. You got
no. It's a home. It looks like a house.
Oh, but it's a studio,
like a modern house. Actually,
okay.
Which prompts a funny story because, but I'll finish where I'm going here. So we did the second Renegade record there. It's called Bullet.
What was the band's name? Renegade
Creation.
Okay.
Creation, and the second record was called Bullet. And it was a fun record. We did that, and I was thankful I got to work extensively on that record as a producer with a really great engineer who's no longer with us named Ed Cherney. So I cherish that time with him. He was such a great guy and an incredible engineer. If you ever want to look him up, he's Cherney is Cherny, and you'll see what he's done. He's one of the things he did was record the Rolling Stones.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
That's a cool thing right there. But it's a ton more stuff. That's just one thing. Anyway, so Ed was the engineer, and we got the record done. And then at a certain point, after we were done, I got a call from the house engineer at that facility.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, hey, what are you doing in a couple of weeks? I said, I don't know. I said, I'm around. He said, well, I'd like to book you for 3 days because Paul Allen is doing a record. And he asked me, out of all the bands in here, who were the most productive? And he was our second engineer, but he was the head engineer in the house.
Right.
He said, well, this group, Renegade Creation. He goes, get me those guys.
So they booked the whole band for...
He couldn't get Robben. Robben was booked. So Landau, Gary Novak, and myself went in, and they needed a keyboard player. So we all know Scott Kinsey, who I've mentioned.
You mentioned, yeah.
So we got Scott on the session.
Wow.
So the four of us, we didn't know what we were doing. We just showed up there. So the first guy that shows up is Joe Walsh.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, here's Joe Walsh, and we're going to record a song with Joe Walsh.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, and it was for Paul Allen's record.
So you guys were backing up Paul. What did he play? Or did he sing? Or he played guitar? Okay.
But he wouldn't play guitar with us. He was intimidated.
Oh, man, for all that money, that would be the whole juice of it for me. Like, holy shit.
He overdubbed. He was
oh my God.
When everybody was gone.
Wow. Yeah. I'd be like, I know I suck, but this is too good to pass up.
Yeah. So he ended up on the record, but we didn't play with him. But that's okay. That's the way he wanted to do it.
Yeah.
He was actually kind of shy.
Paul Allen?
I met Paul Allen a number of times during that whole scenario with the Renegade band recording there and then doing the 3 days of sessions for his record. So we ended up recording with a singer that was in his band. We did a couple of songs with him, one with Joe Walsh, and one with the Wilson sisters from Heart.
Oh wow!
We did a song with them.
God, that's
And then we were supposed to record something for a tune that he was going to have Dwight Yoakam sing on, but I don't know what happened with that. But anyway, the Joe Walsh thing was definitely a groovy thing. But and I'll tell you one quick little funny story. We're sitting in the control room, and and he goes, I noticed when I drove up, there was a tennis court on top of this building. He said, does Paul play tennis? And the engineer said, well, no, he doesn't play tennis, but he dated a tennis player.
So he built her a tennis court?
Yeah, so he built her a tennis court on the roof of this facility.
Wow.
So whenever she was in LA, she had a place to practice. And that was Monica Seles.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, she was a good tennis player.
Yeah, kind of.
So that was it. And since then, the studio was closed. And also since then, sadly, Paul passed.
Yeah, several years ago now.
Yeah. He was dealing with some cancer. So
that's terrible.
That was sad. But, man, got to experience, at least meeting him and having some chats with him, being in his facility in LA.
That had to be really cool.
Oh, yeah. And actually, before all that, I was in Seattle with, I think, the Yellowjackets at one point, and I went to the Experience Museum.
Oh, cool. How was that? Nice?
It's great.
Yeah.
That guy, Geary, architect.
Yeah. And you're talking about?
He built the building.
Frank Geary, I think, right?
Frank Geary. That's
Yeah.
He built the building. It's beautiful. And when I was there in Seattle, it was for like 4 nights with the Jackets at this club in town called the Triple Door. Great place. There's a whole story about that, but I won't take you there. But it's very cool. But the one thing was they had all these wonderful exhibits in the museum. One in particular that I loved was a whole segment of Bob Dylan memorabilia. So guitars and some videos. It was great. It was really great. Nice way to spend the afternoon.
Oh, yeah. What do you know the name? What songs you played on with CSN? I'd love to go back and listen to them if you happen to know them. Or what album they were on, maybe even?
Yeah, well, the first reunion record, which is a black cover with them on, I believe it was on Steve Still's yacht, or I think it was Steve Still's yacht.
Another one you're talking about. But
the 3 of them are on the yacht somewhere in the ocean.
I know exactly.
One song on there called Carried Away. I think that was the name of the song.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and I have a pretty good memory, but
yeah, you have a real good memory. God,
so I sometimes I space on, I've played on
so many thousands of songs, man. How do you remember a song? Dude, that's totally I would be shocked if you knew every song you played. It'd be almost creepy.
I remember a lot, but I don't remember everything. So
I just want to know the name of the album. I can go look on Wikipedia.
So it's the first reunion record, and then there was also, I think, it was another record. I can't remember the name of the record now, but it had like a spaceship on the cover or something. There was a hit off that record. I think it was a song called Dark Star.
Oh, it was a great song. You were on that song?
No, but I'm on a song on the album.
Okay, I'll check
that. I'd have to research because that was one of the songs I recorded. I recorded a bunch of songs on that one session, and then that was it.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to get into any politics, but I think there was something going on with the bass player that was officially in the band.
Dallas was it? Was it Dallas?
No,
Green.
It was a guy named Chocolate Perry.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
George Perry.
Okay, yeah.
His nickname was Chocolate.
Yeah.
Great bass player. Yeah. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
But I think something was going on there, so they brought me in. I played on some stuff, but then I think they resolved, their differences, whatever happened, and
sure.
He was back on board. So totally fine. I don't want to steal anybody's gig.
No.
There's plenty of gigs to go around. So
1978, you did a record with Gino Vannelli, who was pretty much a pop star. The record was called Brother to Brother. And I think you did 3 or 4 songs on that record, but there's 2 of them in particular. The cover song, which is Brother to Brother, and the other one, Feel Like Flying.
yeah,
And man, you are really smoking on there. And
I appreciate it.
oh, it's like it's like you had 3 hands. But for a pop record, that was super progressive. I mean, very unusual. I was curious. It was a long time ago, but what do you remember about those sessions?
Oh, they were a blast, and I loved meeting Gino and his brothers, Joe, his older brother Joe, his younger brother Ross. I also loved meeting his family. You know, it's just a family thing. You know,
You did a lot of records with Joe.
yeah, and with Gino.
Okay.
I worked on 5 records with Gino. So after Brother to Brother, there was Black Cars, there was Big Dreamers Never Sleep, there was Unconsolable Man, and there was a Slow Love.
That's almost impossible. I don't know how you remembered all that, to be honest with you. And seriously, that's
I'm
like
actually on one other record, but what that was a compilation of stuff from the other records that they put into a record with new material and some of his hits.
Gotcha.
They were remastered, so they put a whole package together. So I'm actually officially on that record too, but that was stuff that was already recorded. There's a couple of hits. There was a song called Hurts to Be in Love, which was a really nice ballad, a song called Wild Horses. And then there was a few other tunes, but I remember those 2 because those were, those actually, I think they were responsible for making this one record. It was called Black Cars. That record went gold.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So tell me about those sessions where you like, how did that come about? Where on a pop record, you're just like wailing basically.
Yeah, well, of course, I think I mentioned to you how I got into that whole thing was through Mark Craney, who I had just finished work. Right, he was a drummer. He had just finished work. He and I finished working with Tommy Bolin. We did some other little sessions in Nashville, of all places. Maybe that was after Brother to Brother. So anyway, at one point, Mark called me and said, "You want to audition for this guy, Gino Vannelli?" And I went, "Wow, okay." So he picked me up. We drove out there. I auditioned. They wanted me to do the whole record, I think, at that point. But I mentioned to you, I had already committed to going on the road for like 11 months with Dave Mason.
Dave Mason and Friends.
Yeah. And at that point, I had only done one record with Robben Ford, which was really the precursor to the Yellowjackets. But we hadn't been signed to Warner's yet. And that record, which is called The Inside Story, was done in 1978, and it was produced by a guy named Steve Cropper.
People might know him. That was Robben's first record.
And that was for Elektra, and it was Robben's first record, but it had Russell Ferrante on keyboards, Ricky Lawson on drums,
right?
And I played bass. So that quartet, which later became the Yellowjackets for the first 2 records that we did for Warner Brothers.
That's cool, man.
So so I did this record with Robben and Steve Cropper, Russ and Ricky, and a few other guest musicians. And then it was a crazy time because I got in the sessions for the Gino Vannelli Brother to Brother record. I was rehearsing with Dave Mason to go on this 11-month tour. I had also done a quick little, like 2.5-week tour. Maybe it was a little bit longer with Roy Ayers and Ubiquity.
Yeah, my wife listened to him growing up in England, man. When we first hung out, she's like, "Do you have any Roy Ayers record?" I'm like, "No." I don't have any. Sorry.
If you want one, there's a cool one that's called, I believe it's called the Golden Rod.
The Golden Rod.
Yeah, I think that's the name of the record. And the cover is white with Roy Ayers on it in a yellow shirt. I think that's the name of the record. If it's not the name of the record, it's the name of the hit song off the record.
The Golden Rod. Okay.
The Golden Rod. And he was a burning vibraphonist.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's pretty badass.
He was burning.
That's a tough instrument to play. Man.
Yeah. And when we played, I mean, it was a big band because he was him on vibraphone. He also would sing. He had two background singers, one of which was Mary Clayton, who sang with the Rolling Stones.
Okay, yeah.
Is it Brown Sugar? I can't
it's didn't she sing on Give Me Shelter?
Give Me Shelter.
Yeah.
She sang on that.
Yeah.
So Mary Clayton was one of the background singers. Then there was this guy Justo Amario on tenor saxophone. It was great, killer. I still have worked with. Justo played flute on my first solo record.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, badass cat from Bogota, Colombia. Lives here in LA. There was a really cool keyboard player named Philip Wu, W-O-O, who had previously played with Peebo Bryson.
Oh.
And is Chinese, but he's Chinese American. And then Ricky Lawson on drums. This guy Chano O'Farrell, who played percussion.
He played on a lot of things. I've seen his name many times over the years.
He was a New York cat. A guy named John Longhorn Mosley played trumpet. And a guy named Greg, what's Greg's last name? I can't think of it right off the top of my head. Really funky, funky donkey guitar player. Greg Moore.
Okay.
On guitar. Cool band.
Yeah.
And all R&B, heavy R&B with a tinge of jazz. So it was a fun band.
Yeah. And
we toured a bunch. And then I got off of that tour and went right out with a short tour with Tom Scott and Steve Kahn.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And playing those guys' music. And that was a blast. I actually got Russ Ferrante on that gig because I needed a keyboard player. And I had done this Robben Ford record with Russ. So, and then did the Brother to Brother sessions and then went on for 11 months on and off with Dave Mason. But at the same time, I signed a deal with Polygram with a band called Blackjack.
Okay. So you say you signed the deal to be in the band or to?
No, it was a record deal. I just signed on as one of the members of the band, but I wasn't the main proponent. The two guys, basically they were signing two guys, but they didn't have a band. So this lawyer that I knew got me involved with them. A guy named Steve Weiss, who was Led Zeppelin's lawyer.
Okay.
Who I met when I was on Long Island playing with a girl on guitar named April Lawton.
Yeah, why do I know that name?
She was in a band called Ramatam with Mitch Mitchell on drums.
Okay.
And Mike Panera from the Blues Image on guitar.
This is so wild, man. It's almost like, it reminds you of you ever open like an old book about someone in music and it says, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and it has all the different,
different things.
It's like a mind map of everything. And it just was like listening to this, man. It's very cool.
So all that was going on. And Steve Weiss called me and said, can you come to New York and do a showcase with these two guys that might have a deal on Polygram? And I said, sure. So They flew me to New York, and I rehearsed for a day and a half or whatever it was with Bruce Kulick on guitar,
Mm-hmm.
Sandy Gennaro on drums,
Oh my God.
and Michael Bolton was the lead.
He was the lead singer. That is pretty wild.
And Bruce's brother was originally in that showcase, Bob Kulick,
who just passed recently. Yeah, yeah.
So we ended up getting signed. There was some weird thing going on, which I had no involvement in because I was just flown in from LA to do this thing. So I didn't even know what was going on, but management and Steve Weiss were not, for some reason, happy with Bob. So they orchestrated this whole scenario of getting rid of Bob and just making it a quartet with Michael Bolton, Bruce Kulick, Sandy Gennaro, and myself.
Mm.
I don't know. I think there was some political thing going on. They felt that Bob maybe was trying to throw a wrench into the whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like Bob. I ended up working with Bob later because he was doing these tribute projects, and he hired me to play on a tune or two on a tribute to Pink Floyd.
I heard that. I listened to that as part of getting prepared for this. Yeah.
And Vinny Colaiuta played drums on the track.
A lot of people. That was done a long time ago because some of the people on there are passed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, quite a few. Bob. Yeah, including Bob, but there was other people on there that were passed quite a while ago.
So I signed that deal, and so I ended up doing that record, which was a band ended up being called Blackjack, which I toured with them in between touring with Dave Mason and friends and doing all these other sessions and things. I don't even know how I did it. And then even with Blackjack, I think for a couple of gigs, we opened for Peter Frampton.
Oh, wow. Again.
So, did that and finished the Dave Mason thing. And that was all done in 1980. The Blackjack thing was basically done by 1980 because we did 2 records. One was just called Blackjack. The other one was called
Double Down.
No, it was something like Out of This World or something about the world. Now you can get the whole package. I think online you can buy both records. They're all together.
Mm. Did you take some downtime off after that? Like, how are you about how have you been throughout your career as far as like balance? Because you're a guy that works important. A lot. Yeah. Have you always been good at it?
I'll be honest, after all that all happened in the matter of 3 years, 78, 79, 80. And I signed a deal with what became the Yellowjackets with Warner Brothers. But we didn't start that record till 1980. I think the first record really was released in 81.
Mm-hmm.
First Yellowjackets record, which was a whole nother experience because I went in the studio with Tommy LaPuma and recorded the first Yellowjackets record. So that all was part of that whole blob of things. And to be honest, when I finished the Dave Mason tour, it was 11 months, but there was a month in between that they took a break. It makes sense, right? They could do 11 months straight.
Yeah, you'd hope.
I being filled with energy and doing all this stuff, in that month that I'm supposed to have downtime, I went to Woodstock, New York, and I recorded the second Blackjack record with Eddie Offord.
Okay.
Eddie Offord. Do you know Eddie Offord?
I know his name.
He produced all the Yes records.
Okay.
Like Fragile, and I don't know when he started producing them, but I learned about him from that record, which was my favorite Yes record.
Where did you record, in Bearsville, or because there's so many? That was a big studio back then.
It was another studio that originally was owned by Levon Helm.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And Eddie Offord bought it.
Okay.
And then we ended up in there doing tracks for this new record with Sandy Gennaro, Bruce Kulick, Michael Bolton, myself. They brought in a couple of keyboard players, one of which I was really excited about was David Sanchez.
Okay.
Who lives in Woodstock, play with.
A lot of people live up there now. It's a massive community. Now, still tons of musicians in that whole, region there, Hudson Valley.
Michael Franks lives up there.
Does he? A lot of people. I've had probably 15 people on the show that live in that area.
I think Donald Fagen has a place up there.
Yeah, because it's like a couple of hours from the city, but it's far enough away that it's like no one's going to be bothering you, and it's beautiful community.
It's beautiful. Yeah,
yeah, it's gorgeous.
Spent time there.
Just cold as shit. Otherwise, it's so cold up there, man.
And there's another little town next door to there. It's called Kingston.
Yeah.
So that's that. What I was going to say was, after all that, I realized that I kind of almost lost, like, who am I? Mirror, and I was just like pretty spaced out. So I actually booked myself on a flight. Never been to this place, but I had some downtime before doing the Yellowjackets record, and I knew I needed to regroup and kind of get zenned out. So I booked myself for a whole week in Maui.
You just went by yourself?
I just got on a plane and flew to Maui and stayed at a Sheraton or something, and woke up every day and ate some beautiful fruit.
Yeah, man.
Fruit. Went, laid on the beach, meditated, swam in the ocean. I did that for a week. So after a week's time, I felt like rejuvenated on some level. Flew back to LA and started working on the new Yellowjackets record.
Wow, that's good. That was pretty smart. That's really smart that you did that.
I needed it.
Yeah. Yeah, but when you're it's hard if you're like that person, because I'm that guy, and it's only now that in my 50s that I realize, man, you need to pause and relax.
Everybody needs that.
It's
really
beautiful.
Helps.
Yeah, it helps. It makes you appreciate.
I need that now.
Yeah. you mean from this interview?
No.
It's not the
interview is very cool. Not the no, I mean, even though, when you think about it, we've been stuck at home with COVID. So
oh my God.
That in itself, that's been, I've been able to regroup and take advantage of that. But still, it's been stressful for, a whole 12 months or so.
I think I don't know if I mentioned, I went out with my wife New Year's. We went down to Sarasota, and it was like a proper date. And it was like, oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool. It was like, like we were dating again. We just went out, we had dinner. It was like perfect weather.
That's awesome.
I was like, oh my God. And I didn't realize how desperate I needed that. And I know
you need more of that.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So you were smart enough to put the brakes on and at least go to Maui. I give you a lot of credit for that. Cause it's, when you're when you're a worker, it's hard because you're so preoccupied. I don't know that you are like this, but I tend to be I have been, not anymore, very preoccupied with, getting shit done. For some reason that turned me on, and it's hard to stop that.
Yeah, it's hard to stop. I'm a workaholic. So
yeah.
I can work day and night and just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I have to look at myself in the mirror every once in a while and say, okay, you need a little time.
Yeah. God, that's even just listening to that vacation sounds great. I've been to Maui.
I wish I could do that again. I love Maui. I've been there now on vacation three more times since then. That was 1980. Cool. My wife was a part of that too.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she would say, okay, enough already. We're going to Maui, you know.
Great.
And she would work out all the details and we'd go there. And then you realize when you're in a place like that, it's incredible. In fact, the last time I was there, I didn't want to leave.
I know.
Maybe I could just stay here.
Did you ever go to this place, the Haley Emali country store? It's a restaurant. I don't know why they call it a country store, but man, it was just like it's up country. It's all I know is it's the best meal I ever had, man. And it was just so awesome.
Incredible food there.
All that fresh fish. I just used to eat that every day, man. I love that stuff.
We lucked out. The last time I went there, we rented a place, and it had nice. a saltwater pool. And it had a big outdoor barbecue thing. So we could go to a market and buy some fresh fish and things like that. Now, that's odd for me in a way because I'm a vegetarian.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I read that. That's
occasionally, under my doctor's orders, he would say, you got to you got to get some protein in you.
Yeah.
So don't be shy and eat a piece of fish. It's easily digestible. It has all the essential oils and it'll help you, you know. So, So when I eat fish, I become what's called macrobiotic.
Okay. Is that what pescatarian? Isn't that?
Well, I think you could say that, but that's if you eat a lot of fish. I only eat fish like maybe a half dozen times in a year.
Okay. How long you been a vegetarian?
Since 1970.
What made you do that?
When I went to California, the whole story.
Oh, at the health food? The health food place.
He needed a dishwasher, so I ended up washing dishes, and part of my payment was a free meal.
Oh, and you just got hip to the food.
Veggie food. I didn't have a lot of money back then, and so it was a free meal. I said, "Bring it on!" And it was tasty and good, and made me feel good. So
you've been a vegetarian. That's a long time, man.
It's a long time.
Let's talk. Red Heat is a record of yours, 2007. You released it with Joe Vannelli on keys, but you recently re-released it, and I was curious. What's that? On Blue Canoe. We'll talk about them in a minute. What made you re-release it? And also, I know the record is dedicated to your dad. So tell me about the meaning of this. And I saw this picture. I don't know if it was on your website. It was such a cool picture. I think it was your dad with a big, thick mustache. Mm-hmm. Was there such a cool photo? And I don't know if it's tied in with this record, but tell me about like the whole thing. What made you dedicate?
There's a picture of him inside the artwork.
Oh, okay.
A photo of him in there playing guitar.
Yes. And
he was a merchant marine in World War II. So it's a picture of him on the deck of a ship with all his shipmates.
Okay.
They played in a band. They would get together and play tunes for entertainment on the ship, because they'd be in the Atlantic. Merchant Marines brought supplies to the troops over in Europe. And they were under a big threat. They were constantly being torpedoed by German U-boats. And so it was treacherous existence being a merchant marine. But that's what my dad did. And even though he wasn't a professional musician, he loved music. And that was probably one of my early inspirations because there was a lot of music in our house.
Right.
So when I started doing Red Heat, it's a really long story, but basically to answer your question, my dad was ill, and all the long when I was in the Yellowjackets, he would always ask me if the Jackets would do like a Latin tinged record, and I would say, well, look, there's 3 other guys in the band, and I can't just say we're doing a Latin record, but I said we could do songs that have that influence. So regardless of that, when I got a chance to do this solo record, which was my first solo record was called Art, but this was my second solo record. I talked to Joe Vannelli about working on it with me, and he was totally into it. So then we started realizing we had a lot of similar influences growing up with Latin music.
Oh, okay.
My father would play me tunes all the time by Tito Puente, Celia Cruz, Ray Barreto, Mongo Santamaria, Tito Rodriguez, Machito, all this stuff. So I grew up listening to all that music as a kid. And my family was really wonderful about showing me a lot about the culture.
Okay.
So I grew up predominantly eating island food.
Right.
Soul food, from rice and beans, pasteles, pastelillos, hallacas, tostones, all this great food from the islands. So, and on top of that, my mom and dad would teach me when I was a little kid. They taught me all the dances, merengue, the cha-cha, bolero, pachanga, all these different dances that went with the different music. And then my dad also had a lot of little percussion instruments around the house. So he taught me basic grooves on clave, maracas, guiro, all these different instruments. So I knew a lot about the culture, even as a little kid, going back to when I was 7 years old, so I was aware of that whole culture. And then going to school, in a regular school on Long Island, you had all the other influences.
Sure.
So when he took ill, I got this opportunity to do this record with a small label called Unitone, which I have to always thank John Beasley, the piano player, for turning me on to the folks at Unitone. Unitone was this label that was run by a composer, keyboard player named Patrick Leonard. Patrick Leonard wrote some hit songs with Madonna and produced some of her records. Okay. So he decided to put together this label. And I was one of maybe not the first, but I was in the first batch of artists that was signed to the label. And it was with this record, Red Heat. So I did the record. I did it predominantly with Joe. It was kind of more or less the two of us. And then I casted the songs with a few friends of mine because we had a very small budget. Put the record out. It did quite well. Then the label folded.
Yeah.
And I got a call from a house engineer at the label saying, look, if you want, we're going to close the doors here. But I have your masters. If you want your masters, we're offering you possession of your masters.
That was really cool.
Yeah. So I drove down to the office. I got my box of stuff, and I then owned the masters to Red Heat. And I didn't really do anything else with it. I just hung on to it. And then I did a new record that was unceremoniously released with no label called Nightfall with Joe Vannelli.
Mm.
And not much happened with that, but I had a ball doing that. And that record was dedicated to my daughter.
Okay.
So my father heard Red Heat and then passed away. So I was glad he got to hear that. And then I did this follow-up record, which really didn't get much attention, but it was released. Joe and I worked on it together. And again, I brought in some people, and that had even a tinier budget. But that came out, and that was dedicated to my daughter because we had a very serious emergency with her when she was 7. So, and during that whole experience, that was probably the most stressful thing I ever had to deal with in my life. But it was many years of dealing with that. And the sanctuary that I had during that period of time was going into my little workstation and writing tunes. And that's basically what's on this record, Nightfall, which I ended up just, because I had such a small budget, I just ended up adding Joe as a co-writer on everything. Yeah, we did co-write a bunch of tunes, but I just did the whole thing like a band, 50-50. And Joe had put in so much energy on the record, which I was so grateful for. And even with Red Heat, so he's the featured artist on those two records. And that's basically the story.
Yeah.
And when I started A&Ring Blue Canoe, I had an idea to re-release the records because they were pretty much dead in the water. And I thought, maybe I'll get another little spike out of them. And that's what we did. And Joseph Patrick Moore, the CEO of Blue Canoe, loved the records and offered to re-release them.
Yeah,
those came out last year.
I didn't listen to Nightfall, but I listened to Red Heat. It's a great record. Very cool Latin stuff on there, man.
Thank you.
Very cool. Very cool, man.
It's Long Island Nuyorican vibe.
Nuyorican vibe. I haven't heard someone say that word in a minute. When did you move out to the island? You were like a little kid, probably, right?
Yeah, I was like 5.5, something like that.
Where did you live in the Bronx? Do you remember?
I remember the projects fairly clearly. It's amazing. And I think it was very close to two streets that were always referenced: Pelham Parkway and Gun Hill Road.
Okay, well,
so you'd have to look on a map to see that. And it wasn't, as I learned many years later, wasn't very far from where Jake LaMotta lived.
Interesting. Well, Pelham Parkway, I don't think that crosses Gun Hill Road. Gun Hill Road.
No, it doesn't cross, but those roads were very close to where
they're like
our projects were.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I was born in Westchester Square Hospital.
I used to work around the corner from there. I know exactly where that is. That's funny. That's funny. Jing Chi. So you, Robben Ford, and Vinny Colaiuta. I love all three records you guys did. Any chance there's going to be anything else?
There is a fourth record.
There is?
Yeah, that was predominantly produced by Robben Ford, but I co-produced it. And it's a record called Supremo.
Why wasn't it
I don't think a lot of
like
there wasn't
Apple
a
Music.
lot of fanfare behind that one. It was really different. I will say that.
Okay.
It was a very different record than the first three. So,
okay. Yeah.
But I will announce right here with you that I'm trying to release a live record.
Oh.
A second live record of Jing Chi that I have in the can.
When is that?
And it's with Vinny Colaiuta, Robben Ford, myself, and special guest Larry Goldings.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I love that band. That was such a I want to ask you about one track on the Live at Yoshi's.
Oh.
The last song, Blues MD.
Right.
This is my notes. Good Lord, man, that sounds like three dudes playing the bass at once. How the hell did you make that happen? That's maybe the most incredible bass playing I've heard in one space.
Oh, well,
that was nuts, man. What were you doing there, man?
I don't remember.
Did you know?
I don't remember.
Did you know, like, okay, I was on tonight? Do you remember? You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Holy smoke, man.
I know this. Anytime I'm on stage with Vinny and Robben, it's a otherworldly experience because both of those guys are incredible musicians. So it's like pinching myself that I'm there with them, communicating on this level, so. Even
the vocals, Robben singing on some of those records sounded great, man. Really good. Really good.
So we did that at Yoshi's in Oakland. And basically I recorded, I brought Rich Breen out from LA, he drove up with his rig, his Pro Tools rig. And we recorded 4 shows out of 12.
Wow.
But we recorded 4 shows.
So you had a 12-night run or 12 days, 12. So you're doing 2 sets a day?
2 sets a night. Yeah. 6 nights.
That's exhausting in that band.
I was really tired.
Yeah. That's exhausting. 2 sets a night with that band.
Yeah. And it just so happened. Okay. So I'll give you a little insight on this Blues MD too, because it's kind of wild what I ended up doing in the studio because we have technology. But I had 2 recordings of that song.
Okay.
On one of the recordings, there happened, I don't know, it was pretty loose, you know. So on one night, Vinny Colaiuta did a drum solo on the song, which he didn't do on another night.
Oh, and you would do the bass solo.
And I did a bass solo, and Robben had a guitar solo, and Odd Morrow had a keyboard solo. And one night also, Mark Russo came to visit us, and I asked him if he had his sax, and he did, and I invited him to come up and sit in. So I had one performance of Mark Russo playing a sax solo on that song, and one performance of Vinny Colaiuta doing a drum solo, but it wasn't the performance that we wanted. The performance that we wanted had Odd Morrow, Robben, Vinny, and myself. Okay. So I edited in Mark Russo's solo from another night.
Wow.
And Vinny Colaiuta's solo from another night.
That's pretty cool, man.
Song and made it even longer than it was, but I figured it's not going to be a song that's going to get airplay anyway.
No. It's
an album cut. So I figured, why not have all the solos on there and just have a big party? So I was able, with the genius of Rich Breen, who was the engineer and the mixer of this, I edited in the 2 solos to the one performance. So I ended up having everybody solo on the one track just for fun, you know.
Honestly, one of the most incredible bass playing songs I've ever heard. I mean, it was like, I listened to that like 3 times in a row when I was like, holy, I mean, that was,
I don't even remember what I did. And I haven't really listened to that song in quite a long time, to be honest. So I'll have to go back and check it out.
It's phenomenal, man.
What the heck did I do?
Everybody listening, listen to Jing Chi live at Yoshi's. Listen to the last song, Blues MD. It will just blow your mind.
And by the way, here's another little tidbit. Blues. It was a blues that we basically kind of jammed on. Robben had the idea to do it. And it was based on something that he used to jam on with Miles Davis.
Oh, that's cool.
So Blues MD.
Blues MD, yes.
Blues
Dime just dropped.
Davis.
Yeah, okay. Dime just dropped on that. Very cool, man. The engineering on that is incredible, that whole record. It's recorded really clean, man.
That's
really
Rich
clean.
Breen.
Yeah, great job on that.
I've done a lot of work with Rich. I'm doing a bunch of work with him right now, but he's an exceptional engineer, and even more so like a mixing engineer, which is really important. That's different than tracking.
Yeah, he did a great job on that.
Mm-hmm.
You just finished playing up on and producing a record called Flying Spirits. And I got to look at this where notes how to pronounce. Okay,
I can pronounce them for you.
Yeah, with Nicholas Meyer and Dewa Bujana, the Dewa Bujana group. Yeah,
and Sat Saya.
Now you're totally
Sat Saya is
way out of my league here.
That's okay. No, Sat Saya is the suling player. That's the handmade, hand-carved wooden flute from Borneo.
Okay.
Right. And Dewa Bujana, he's from Jakarta. He's from Indonesia. Nicholas Meyer is from, I think, outside of Lausanne, Switzerland.
Oh, I thought he was from England or for some reason.
But he lives in London.
Oh, okay. I saw something there.
And he toured with Jeff Beck.
I saw that, man. Yeah. Great record.
Asaf Circus, who is from Israel.
Okay.
He's the drummer.
Right. It's a great record. Some great guitar playing on there. And I'd never heard particularly Indonesian rhythms and musical references, but that was pretty interesting. Pretty cool to hear that.
There's a lot of that there.
they had that one song. It's the whole song. It's like second track maybe or something like that.
Yeah.
How'd you get involved with that project? And what's like, how did you, put Dewa, Bajana, and Nicholas Meyer together? How did that all come about?
Well, I knew Dewa because I'd worked with him before with Chad Wackerman, actually.
Okay.
And we worked on a record for a keyboard player from Jakarta who's named Dwiki Darmawan, who I met through a composer that I had produced who lived here in town named Roger Byrne.
Okay.
And if you look on Blue Canoe Records, there's a tribute to Roger that I had released, which are a compilation and of all 3 records I produced for Roger. So Dewa I'd known, and then through Leonardo Palkovic, who ran Moon June Records, and was managing Allan Holdsworth when I worked with Allan, was a friend of Nicholas Meyer's. And Nicholas Meyer, Nicholas Meyer wanted to do a record. There was, predominantly.
You good? You want to get some water or something?
Yeah, I'll get some in a minute.
Okay.
Nicholas wanted to do a record that was predominantly a trio project with Vinny Colaiuta and myself.
Look, hold on, time out. Who doesn't want to do a trio project with you and Vinny Colaiuta? I'm sorry, man. I'm not trying to blow smoke, but that's like saying, I mean, come on. Who doesn't want to do that? If you're into jazz and fusion, man.
That's very
especially. No, it's true.
So I hooked that up and I met Nicholas and we did a record here. I got him a studio, worked with a couple other people that he put on the record. He wanted to get Jeff Beck on the record, but that didn't quite work out.
Yeah, I wonder how that works. How does that work?
I don't know. I think that it's a shot in the dark, but it can happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, we did that record a long time ago. So I think what happened was through Leonardo Palkovic, he knew Dewa because he had put out Dewa's records. And at the same time that Nicholas put out this record with Vinny and myself, a record came out on Moon June of Dewa Bujana with Jimmy Johnson on bass, who's a phenomenal bass player.
Jimmy Johnson from Muscle Shoals?
No. Jimmy Johnson, the bass player with now James Taylor.
Okay.
But also played with Allan Holdsworth with Chad Wackerman on a ton of records. My favorite rhythm section for Allan Holdsworth, Chad Wackerman and Jimmy Johnson. Anything with those guys. So Nicholas said, I want to put a tour together and I'd love to get Dewa and I in collaboration. And he had this idea to bring in this drummer from Israel named Asaf Circus. And Dewa was wanting to work with Sat on Suling.
On the flute, yeah.
A flute. And Nicholas asked if I would be interested to join in. And I said, this sounds great. So we did like 2 weeks in England and a week outside of England, which was like in Holland and Belgium and Germany or something like that.
This was when, like last year?
No, this was COVID? Like 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, 2018, I believe.
Okay.
So we did that and it was great. It was a lot of fun. And in 2019, it was the idea to do a record came up. And I said, okay, we could do that. And then it was going to be difficult to get us all in one room.
Because Dewa's in Indonesia?
He's in Jakarta.
Is Jakarta Indonesia? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's the capital.
Okay, yeah.
So he's in Jakarta. Sat's in Borneo,
Okay.
which is an island part of that whole system of islands, right?
Okay.
You know, because you have Bali, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So
drummers in Israel.
the drummer was actually, he's Israeli, but he was living in London.
Okay, so he's in London, and then Nicholas is in
London.
In London, okay.
So Nicholas said, "Okay, I can do template tracks of my tunes here in London with Asaf." And I believe David did some template tracks and sent them to Nicholas so they could do guitar and acoustic fretless guitar and drums there, right? So all that was done in London. Then they sent everything to Dewa in Jakarta. Dewa finished all his guitar stuff and other little things and enhancements, and brought Sat down from Borneo to do all the Suling parts. And then Dewa sent me all of that. And and I went into Karma August and Brian August's studio, which is a stone's throw from my house here in Venice Beach. And I overdubbed all the bass parts. And then I sent a rough mix of everything to Dewa and Nicholas for approval. And they wrote back and said, love everything. I think I had to make a couple of little corrections on something, but love everything. And we love the mixes. And I said, well, they're just rough mixes. And they said, well, would you be interested to mix this record? And I said, okay, I think I can do that. So I hired Karma to mix it with me. We mixed the whole record. Actually, I take that back. He loved the record so much that he mixed the whole record with an engineer that he does Atmos mixes with.
Right, is what you started saying.
So he did the whole record in Atmos, which then he brought me in. He said, look, I'm sorry, we didn't start mixing in stereo yet because we're experimenting with this new technology. So we mixed the whole record in Atmos, and we want to get your opinion about it and any notes and any changes. So I sat there for a couple of days, listened to the whole thing in Atmos, made a few little comments. They did the changes, and they since even tweaked it more from there. But then from the Atmos mixes, they made stereo mixes.
Did you have to listen to it with 12 speakers around you?
Yeah.
Did you have to go to, do you have that at home or in your studio?
No, Karma has it, and he's a block from my house.
Okay, so you just went there, hung out, turned it on loud, and then that's got to be like a deep immersion, man. 12 speakers.
It was incredible, and it was all pre-COVID, so that's the story. So I handed that record in probably in, I think it was all done in stereo, like sometime in September of 2019, right?
And is it officially out now? Because I listened to it, but I don't know if that was
yeah. So I finally handed everything in, artwork and all that, during COVID.
Okay.
Like in March or April, we've got everything finalized. And then Blue Canoe was kind of in disarray on some level. On some level because of COVID, not their fault. So they had to slow down the releases and try to figure out what the heck was going on. So
yeah, how do you do a release during COVID? It's hard enough nowadays in the music business to release something. How the hell do you plan it during COVID? Yeah, it's got to be near impossible.
So he finally got a release date for Flying Spirits for December of 2020.
Okay, so it's just come out.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
First week in December.
It's a great record, man.
2020. So that just came out, and trying to think what else. Well, I mentioned this other duo from Syracuse that just came out.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that? It was
Bill DeCosimo
and Edgar Pagan.
Right. So that record's called Con Moto. I produced that, and that came out on a label out of Syracuse called Subcat, Subcat. And that's out now. That came out like around the first week in December of 2020 as well.
What kind of music is that?
It has some Latin influence, but it also has some funk and even some rock. I got them to do a version of, maybe it was because I don't know why, subliminally thinking of how I got the gig with these guys in a motorcycle bar, but we did.
You did Born to Be Wild?
No, we did Magic Carpet Ride.
Oh, cool.
By Steppenwolf, which is a cool tune. So it's a psychedelic version of that with Edgar Pagan singing that. So there's a new version of Magic Carpet Ride. And then I wanted to do a version of that. I thought it was up their alley because it's funky and it's got a cool vibe, you know, and it's got a little bit of the Latin thing, you know, because of the war had a little bit of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like almost like the Chicano vibe or something.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? So I kind of always dug this tune, Cisco Kid.
Oh, great song by War.
So
yeah,
we cut a track.
That's a very Latin. The percussion in there is like, it's Latin, period. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So we did a version of that, but then they had an idea to not sing it and do it as an instrumental.
Okay, cool.
So Bill DeCosmo plays B3, and it's a B3 instrumental of Cisco Kid.
And if people want to look it up, it's under Bill DeCosmo's name?
And Edgar Pagan.
Okay, so it's Bill Cosimo. Dicosimo.
Yeah, D-I capital C-O-S.
I-M-O.
I-M-O, yeah.
And
DeCosmo.
Edgar Pagan is Pagan.
Right.
And it's called Con Moto, which means with motion. All right.
Yeah. There's more, but we can move on. You pick a subject and
knee-jerk reaction. This is a very tough question. Top 3 experiences you've had musically. Could be studio or live. I don't.
Gosh.
I know, man. This is for a guy like you who's had a lifetime of experiences.
Well, I have to. Oh boy. I mean, this is just so much stuff. I mean, the anything to do with the Yellowjackets has got to be in there. That would include the Robben Ford record, the Inside Story record with Cropper. I mean, that's 32 years of music for me, you know, on all these in all these different areas, like producing, playing. So, you know, shedding and trying to get chops together to play this music, which was very advanced. Even the first record, you know, the Inside Story had some, I don't know. Do you know that record?
I don't, man. I'm sorry. I'm embarrassed to say I don't.
Don't be embarrassed by that. It's an obscure record at this point. I mean, it was done in 1978. So it's a long time ago. And it's hard to find. I've only been able to find, I mean, I think you could find stuff on YouTube because you can find anything.
Yeah, it seems like you can get anything on there.
So you can Google YouTube and Robben Ford, The Inside Story, and I bet you a bunch of tracks will come up.
Yeah.
But you can actually still buy the CD in Japan.
That's wild.
Yeah, they still sell them. And then so that was you know, Robben Ford into Yellowjackets, 30, maybe more than 32 years, 33 years, 34 years. That's anything to do with that band and that music. I have to put on that special experience list. There comes to mind now. There's a session I did for a record, and I have to put it in there. It was short-lived, but I tried to soak in every minute. Thanks to another great engineer and a lovely person that I really enjoyed hanging with, and Andy Johns.
Oh, wow.
I think on some level he was a fan of mine because he would try to bring me into stuff. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work. One time it worked was he brought me in to play on a Ronnie Wood record.
What was that like?
Oh, that was incredible. I was in awe the whole time. And like I said, I tried to soak in every second of my time. It was about a week's worth of sessions.
You played the whole record?
I played on the whole record. Maybe I think Ron played bass on, because he's a bass player.
Yeah.
I think Ronnie played on some tunes, but I played on all the other tunes.
Now he usually brings in like a bunch of special guests. Who else did you get to see through that milieu?
Okay, so the first day I walked in and it was Charlie Watts on drums. So
how cool is that? That guy's like a Swiss watch, man, when it comes to keeping time, ain't he?
I sat next to him the whole week playing music. So that in itself has to be on a shelf, you know, of a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
So who else? Great piano player, Nicky Hopkins.
Oh yeah, sure.
On piano. And Ian McLaglen on organ, okay, which was one of Ronnie's cohorts in the Small Faces.
Yep.
Played B3, and he's no longer with us, nor is Nicky, I think.
No, I think Nicky's passed as well. That's pretty amazing.
So that was the band. That was the band I played with for a whole week.
Was that in England recorded?
No, it was in Mandeville Canyon here in Los Angeles, in a house that I guess Ronnie was renting. And they converted this giant, like 3-car garage into a studio. So that's where I went. I walked up the driveway into this garage that was made into a studio. And, you know, I just hung with those guys for a whole week. And it was
so cool.
Just an awesome experience. But that's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I think they were a little perplexed about who I was, but Andy brought me in. So, you know, they weren't going to argue with that. And we played the music, and I had no problem playing the music. I love that music.
Which record was that?
It was an obscure Ronnie Wood record called 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
And that's, you know, got to be on the top 10 list of sessions, you know, to be.
Yeah, that must have been terrible ending.
All that, yeah. And then some people came by while we were recording. Jim Keltner,
very cool,
who I did some sessions with as well, some very interesting sessions with him, which we could talk about. I love Jim Keltner.
Yeah, let's talk. After you give me your number 3, we could talk about Keltner.
And then Bobby Womack.
Oh,
and sat in.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, those guys came over. So, yeah. I mean, that's good. So you said top 3. So
yeah, knee-jerk reaction. It's just for now.
Okay. Gosh. Well, knee-jerk. I'm trying to be knee-jerk about it, but there's just so much stuff that's flying through my head. Okay. How about this? How about going to New York and working on a Diana Ross record?
Wow.
At a studio that's no longer in existence. It was a great studio called Media Sound. It was up in the upper 50s in midtownish, uptown area. Producer was Gary Katz, who produced all the Steely Dan records. And I think the first day I walked into the studio, it was Jeff Porcaro on drums with Greg Fillinganes, I believe, playing piano, and Donald Fagen on Rhodes.
Wow.
And then a guitar player named, what was his name? That's on the tip of my tongue. He was a Canadian guitar player who replaced Tommy Bolin in the James Gang. He's right on the tip of my tongue, and I used to rattle off his name quite easily. I might have to look him up.
I'm trying to think. You know, after Tommy,
after Tommy, he played guitar in the James Gang.
I don't
and
know
he became a friend of, I guess, Gary Katz, who invited him. Dominic Troiano.
Yeah, there you go. Good one. Very good. Yeah, yeah.
It was in there somewhere.
Yeah,
but
there you go.
He was on guitar. So we caught a tune that Donald wrote for Diana. Diana wasn't there yet. Donald sang a rough ref vocal for her, which was awesome. I love the way Donald sings.
Yeah, he's got a great voice. I mean, everything.
Yeah, it's quirky, but it's beautiful. It's just that was I think my first day on that session. I was there for another couple of days because we caught some more tracks, which Donald didn't play on everything. But I think Greg was there, and Porcaro was there.
Did Diana record with you guys?
She just came in to say hello.
Okay.
So it was nice to meet her. She was there. She was there with her chauffeur.
Of course.
Came into the control room and met everybody and listened to what we had just recorded, and she loved it all. And she was very gracious. It was very nice to meet her because she's like Diana Ross.
Diana Ross, yeah.
So the next thing, I'll add a fourth thing.
Yeah.
It's attached to that. So they flew, I flew back to LA with Jeff Porcaro and Gary Katz. And we went to Sound City, which is a very famous studio in LA, which the gentleman from the Foo Fighters,
Dave Grohl,
he bought that place, or bought equipment from that place or whatever. But we recorded in there for a couple of days. And my first day there was with Jeff Porcaro, Steve Lukather on guitar, and Michael McDonald on.
Oh, wow.
And we recorded a Michael McDonald song. I think there was also, there was another keyboard player who did like synths and stuff like that, a guy named Robbie Buchanan, who's a famous studio musician here in LA.
God, your memory is like for names is freaking amazing. I mean, it's just like precise. I mean, the retention is pretty amazing, man.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I also think Rick Derringer was part of that session.
That's interesting. He lives down here.
Yeah.
About an hour south of me, I think.
And that made sense because I worked on another record with Gary Katz, and it was the first record I worked on that Gary Katz was involved. And that's how I hooked up with Gary Katz, because when I did this record that he produced, I played bass on the whole record. It was a singer-songwriter named James House, and happened to be managed by the Yellowjackets manager, which is how I got called to do the session. But Gary Katz was the producer, and Rick Derringer played guitar.
Oh, okay.
On that session. And from that, Gary Katz just kept calling me to do stuff. So
great.
In the mid 80s, I did probably a half dozen or more projects with Gary Katz as the producer, who brought me in to play. So,
is that pretty common? Most that I mean, you've got guys that you play with that want you on the gig, but you also have producers, I'd imagine, someone as prolific as yourself.
In those days, in the 80s, and maybe even in the 90s, if you hooked up with a producer that dug what you did, it was almost certain that you'd get called to work on other things that producer was working on.
As it should be. That's that's how you're creating opportunities yourself. You know, that's like any business, you know.
And I have to add this one record. So there's a fifth.
There's a fifth. Here you go.
Rosie Vela. She recorded a record on A&M that was called Zazu. Z-A-Z-U.
What'd you like about this?
Well, it was produced by Gary Katz. She was a Vogue model that was living with a guy who I later ended up doing some stuff with, Peter Max.
Oh, the artist. That guy used to create some awesome shit, man.
Yellow Submarine.
He just, everything there was a time in it's probably the mid to late 70s in New York City in particular. There was so many exhibits. I remember the television like lighting up with commercials for Peter Max exhibitions of artwork, man. He was the man.
So he was just hanging about. I got to meet him. And of course that was honorable to meet Peter Max. And many years later, I'll just add this as a side note. I got in contact with him and he did a cover for the Yellowjackets.
Which one? Which record?
A record called Altered State.
That's about a good name for a Peter Max album cover.
Yes, and he did the cover art.
That's cool.
So we did this record with Gary Katz producing, and it made a lot of noise because it was the first time in a long time that these guys worked in the studio together. And it was Walter Becker and Donald Fagen.
Ah, okay.
Playing guitar and keyboards. And that band had Jim Keltner on drums.
Perfect lead in, because my next question was to say you want to talk about your Jim Keltner stories.
Okay, so Jim Keltner, that was a great record. That record was a lot of fun to work on with Jim. And then the other, I did a bunch of more things, but the other thing of note that I remember doing with Jim that I was excited about was the Michael Penn project.
Yeah.
Which we didn't do the whole record. We just played on some tracks.
Why this is popping up here. Sorry about that. I don't even have FaceTime enabled.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry about that.
Somebody wants you. So, so it was that record, and what was that record called? Michael Penn. That one's eluding me, but I could see the cover. That was a fun thing. And that was just an overdub. I came in with Jim, and we overdubbed on a couple of tracks. And that, anytime you're in a room with Jim Keltner, that's a special.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It was Michael Penn. You know who Michael Penn is, right?
The singer, yeah. He's an artist, the singer-artist, right?
And you know who he's related to, right?
Sean.
That's right. You knew that. Which is a funny thing, because I had a relationship with this, a really cool music relationship with this composer who was also a badass keyboard player named Joe Vitarelli.
Okay.
And Joe Vitarelli ran a studio here in town, wrote some great music, had an affiliation with Wayne Shorter.
Okay.
On a record called Atlantis. But Joe and I we became good friends. And one night he invited me out to dinner, and it was dinner with him and Sean Penn.
Oh, that's so funny.
So who knows?
Celebrity sightings.
Yeah. So, and that was fun. It was fun to sit and just have a casual dinner with, I'm a huge fan of Sean Penn.
Yeah, he's a great actor, man.
Yeah, and he's a great humanitarian.
Yeah, he does a lot of charity work. Yeah. This is an unfair question because you've played with so many. Is there like and I'll give a disclaimer. If you're not on this list, it's just because he's not. This is a quick question. Favorite musicians you enjoyed playing with?
Oh gosh,
I know that's like almost an unfair question.
Well, there's probably like 50 or 60 drummers. I mean, because relationship with bass and drums is very special. It's foundation. And
so let's keep it to one. Let's keep it to drummers then. Favorite drummers then.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. I'm just trying to make it easy for you. I know it's an unfair question.
I can throw just, to no disrespect to all the guys I've played with, but I'll just throw out a few.
Yeah.
And some of them will really make sense, like Russ Ferrante on piano and keyboards, because I spent probably 40 years playing with the guy.
Yeah.
And when you play with somebody for that long, it goes into like some kind of metaphysical place.
Yeah.
You do things together. You're not even thinking about it. It just all happens, So I have that kind of sixth sense about playing with him, as well as Will Kennedy.
Okay.
On drums. And that's because of all the years I spent in the Yellowjackets playing with those guys. Okay. But I find through the years that I'm so locked in with drums. I love drums. I think that was originally one of the instruments I wanted to play as a kid, but I just didn't go there, and I ended up playing bass. So, but bass in a way is very rhythmic. So in an unusual, unique way, the bass is kind of like drums.
Yes.
Rhythmic.
Yeah.
I'll just rattle off a few guys off the top of my head, but Jeff Porcaro was important. Vinny Colaiuta has been very important. Lately Gary Novak has been very important. I could probably name 100 drummers. There's Lionel Cordew. There's I love playing with him. He's a New York guy. Sonny Emery from Atlanta. Gary Husband.
Sure.
It's Carmine Appice. And his brother Vinny. I played Vinny on a bunch of stuff. Love playing with him. So I mean, there's a little overview of some different guys. Some guys who play more rock. Some guys who play more jazz. Peter Erskine. I'll throw him in too. So love playing with all those guys. Then there's Russ Ferrante. There's, I love playing with Scott Kinsey, I mentioned before. Jeff Lorber, who I've been in, and now an official member of the Jeff Lorber Fusion.
Oh, you are? You've done a lot of work with him.
Yeah, I've produced now 7 records for the Jeff Lorber Fusion.
And didn't one of them get a Grammy, I think?
We won a Grammy.
Yeah, congratulations.
Records back, a record called Prototype.
That's awesome.
And that was quite an experience because I think Jeff was nominated 7 times but didn't win. I've been nominated 22 times.
Have you seriously?
Yeah, but I won twice prior to this. So thanks to my wife, we hooked up because the Grammys that year were in New York.
Okay.
And they don't pay for you to be there. You got to do your own travel and all that. So thanks to my wife, because she's incredible, she hooked us up with a couple of round trip tickets because she had this account with some miles that were going to expire, and it just so happened it covered 2 round trip tickets from LA to New York and back.
That's awesome. So
we had tickets, and then through a friend, she knew a concierge at this hotel called the London, which is a really nice hotel.
That's isn't that Gordon Ramsay's hotel?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right next to what used to be here, like right around the corner from the Carnegie Deli, which is gone now. Yeah, I know exactly. I went in there for a drink once with my wife like 15 years ago. Yeah.
So she hooked us up with a room, and of course the concierge, because we had a link to him through a friend. he upgraded us. So we had a suite. And then the craziest thing was we didn't know where the nominee dinner hang was. There's a party. It's actually a party. It's not even a dinner. So they serve hors d'oeuvres and have an open bar. And that's where you go and you get your medal.
Oh, that's cool.
And they take a photo of you, right? So so we're trying to figure out, where is this place? It was in this theater or something. So as we pull into the front of the London hotel, we get out and I look down the street and literally next door was the theater where they had.
Oh, couldn't be any better, man. So it was like a magic weekend. That's
so
great.
All we had to do was walk like 40 paces to the nominee party. Then we didn't have to drive anywhere. The one thing was there was no food. And these people walking around with
open bar and no food. That's dangerous.
Like little teeny things like this. Ate one thing. Is like, I need about 40 more of these.
Yeah.
So when we finished being there, and I got to hang with Jeff Lorber and his manager, we were very excited. And I ran into a lot of other people there. But after that, I went to the concierge at the London and I said, where can we go get a nice dinner? And he recommended this beautiful little Italian place, which was about 4 blocks from there.
Perfect.
Made a reservation. We sat down, had a nice, quiet dinner after the party.
Crab pasta? Crab pasta?
No crab pasta for... No crab pasta that night. I don't even remember what we had, but it was delicious. No seafood at all. So we the next day was the big show, right? So we went and our category was 3rd on the list, and
that's great.
They gave out, because it's pre-telecast, so I think they gave out like 90 trophies in the pre-telecast, but we were 3rd. And funny enough, the 1st and the 2nd category, nobody was there to accept. So
that is weird.
The Academy accepted in their behalf, and then the 3rd category was our category, and we won.
That's awesome, man. What a nice weekend. Like a really cool weekend.
It was incredible. And I was so happy for Jeff.
Yeah.
Because it was his first win.
Yeah.
He was even like dumbfounded. There we were. We ended up on stage. We accepted the award from the Paul Schaefer.
Oh, cool.
Paul Schaefer and his band was the band for the pre-telecast.
That's cool, man. He seems like a happy guy, man.
Oh, God. And you can only imagine, very successful.
Yeah. Wonderful
life he's had. And then I knew a bunch of the guys in the band, Will Lee.
Yeah.
Bass, this was great. It was great. So it was a wonderful night and another incredible experience for my wife and I, nice weekend. Got to fly home with a win for another Grammy. It was my 3rd Grammy. So, what can you say? I'm very humbled and honored with all that.
Do you have a favorite New York City food, man? Since you mentioned it.
Pizza.
Yeah, that's mine. That's my go-to.
Yeah. And, you got to find the right place, but you're in a good place to find good pizza.
Oh, hell yeah.
So out of all that, Jeff Lorber, I have been a traditional, I guess, honorary is what I meant, an honorary member since 2010. And I've now co-produced 7 Jeff Lorber fusion records.
That's awesome.
3 were nominated. So I got 3 extra nominations from that, but 1 win. So that's
awesome. That's awesome.
Well, yeah, thanks. I was hoping we'd get some kind of acknowledgement on the last thing we did, because it was a collaborative thing with Mike Stern.
Okay.
It was Jeff Lorber, Mike Stern. It was a record we entitled 11.
Is it like his 11th record?
No, it was, well, originally it was because there was 11 tunes on the record. But then we were making the joke of the Spinal Tap going to 11.
Oh, yeah.
So
turn it up to
all
11.
that entered into the equation, but we were happy to call it 11. We thought that was kind of a cool title, but it's okay. You know, not everything's going to get nominated, so you try.
But you got 3 Grammys. That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah. There's some other things too. I got a Dove Award.
That's like the Canadian Grammy.
That's the Christian.
Oh,
right.
What's the Canadian? Okay, I didn't realize
the Canadian one is the Juno.
Juno, right? Sorry, right. Thank you. Yeah, it's the Juno, right?
Well, I've been involved. I didn't particularly win a Juno, but being with Gino Vannelli, brother to the brother, won a bunch of Junos. So I've been connected to that, but I didn't officially win, although I could have asked for one.
Yeah, you could have. You played on the record.
Yeah.
So you got a Dove Award, you said, for what project was that?
Christian is like the Christian Grammys, and that was for a collaborative record that was produced by now see that now my age is starting to catch up.
Man, come on. You've had like 100 names here already. You out of your mind?
Quincy Jones.
Okay.
It's in there. It's in the computer somewhere. Quincy Jones produced this, and it was a contemporized performance of Handel's Messiah.
That's interesting.
And it had all these different artists that did segments of the Messiah.
Oh, that's cool.
So it was like Al Jarreau and Chaka Khan and this young artist named Tevin Campbell.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't he was with like Belle Biv DeVoe or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
I remember him. Yeah, he was real successful.
Very successful. And a Take Six.
Okay.
Was in there. I think Stevie Wonder was in there somewhere. So a lot of people. And then they wanted an instrumental track to round things out, I guess, on the record. And the guys from Take Six, because we had worked with them, they recommended us.
Oh, cool.
Which was so sweet of them. And Quincy said, yeah, sure. So they sent us a bunch of the music and we got to select what we wanted to do. So we did an instrumental version of a part of the Messiah that was called Behold the Lamb of God. And we did this very nice ballady instrumental version of that. And that ended up on the record. And that whole project won a Dove Award.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
That's nice. All right. This is another list, man. So just
okay.
Bear with me for this last one.
Okay.
Top 3 Desert Island discs for you. Knee jerk, just for right now, because obviously I could ask you in 20 minutes would be different.
Okay. I might have to expand it a little bit.
You could say like a box set or something.
Well, I could probably give you 1,000 records.
Oh, of course. But
how about 5?
Yeah, 5. Yeah.
Okay. And this is not a knee-jerk response. I actually saw that question and I thought, that's a hard question.
It's a very hard question.
Because I had to really think about stuff. And I'm not even totally sure that this is the list, but I put this down so that I would have an answer for you without wasting too much time going through my Rolodex of recordings. But Miles Davis, Miles Smiles,
mm-hmm.
Beatles Revolver,
mm-hmm.
Rubber Soul, 2 Beatles records, Joni Mitchell Blue, and Steely Dan Gaucho.
I love that record, man.
So I put those in. There's probably another 1,000+ records I could have chosen, but there you have it.
Thank you for taking the time to think that through, man.
Yeah, I had to really think about it, and it's so much more stuff I could have gone to, but those, if I had those 5 records on a desert island, I could survive.
You know, what's interesting about Steely Dan, I always felt like they were a New York City band for some reason. I don't know why. Like
well,
when
New York.
Yeah, but didn't they do everything out in LA, I thought?
They did a lot of stuff in LA, but that was because Gary Katz ended up getting a gig at ABC Dunhill Records, and the offices were here in LA.
Okay, so it wasn't.
He brought
okay.
them. But they, because Donald and Walter met at Bard.
Oh, Bard, yeah, because didn't one of them live like in Yonkers or just outside the city somewhere?
I think so.
Rye.
I think Donald actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think Donald grew up in New Jersey.
Okay.
But they're from the area. So.
Okay. Because every time I'd listen to them, even as a little kid, 12, 13 with my Walkman, I'd be walking through the city and I'd always feel like this is the sound. This is my soundtrack.
This is the sound from New York.
Yeah, it was.
They are. You're absolutely right.
Okay. Yeah.
They're New Yorkers.
Okay. Same thing with, Simon and Garfunkel, which another New Yorkers. You just felt like this was their, like, I don't know, or.
In fact, the one compliment, and I hope Donald doesn't mind me saying this, Donald complimented me once. He said I had a cool vibe with playing shuffles. And as you know, Steely Dan has a lot of shuffles.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, I don't know. I see I'm comfortable with shuffles. And he said, yeah, maybe it's a Long Island thing.
Could be.
So I thought that was a nice compliment.
Yeah.
Growing up in Long Island and playing shuffles, I thought. Because that's not an easy groove.
No, it's not an easy groove at all.
And I played shuffles with a lot of people. And sometimes it doesn't work out. Because it's not something, especially it's really hard on drums.
Yeah.
But obviously the king of shuffles might be a guy like Jeff Porcaro.
Right.
If you listen to Rosanna.
Yeah, that's right.
That's like an iconic shuffle.
That's very true. Yeah. All right, Jimmy, tell me about 1 or 2 things you've done or 1 or 2 changes you made that have had the biggest impact on your life. Could be personal growth wise, professionally, musically, spiritually, anything that was important to you.
Well, getting through several years of my daughter's illness, that changed my life in a very deep and important way, I think. It definitely pushed me into some other places that I never thought I would ever experience, but it changed me in a big way that I think benefits me as a person dealing with people and working on my craft. It took on a whole nother level of seriousness. So.
Yeah.
And I have to add to that my couple of experiences going to India.
Wow.
And working there for short periods of time, 3 or 4 days each, but seeing the enormous unbalanced society that exists there, which is mostly occupied by people that live in squalor.
Yeah.
That had a very serious impact in me. And I think I even tell my wife, a couple of times I came home from being in India, I was changed. It changed.
In what way? If you're comfortable.
Yeah, well, it's perspective of life. And, I cannot take anything that I'm experiencing for granted comparatively to what those, growing up and living in a society like that, it just seems impossible.
Yeah.
Like even just in Mumbai, and the other thing is I was seeing it from this very you know, through my time there, I was seeing it from a very I can't think of the word, but a place where, like, I was driving around, to put it in perspective, I was being driven around in like a Mercedes SEL,
right,
with tinted windows. And I'm driving through these neighborhoods. It's people are just living in dirt, you know,
wow,
and maybe, you know, maybe don't even have a penny to their wife, you know, that they're just living off even scams, you know, like
yeah,
the begging thing was off the hook, you know. And I was told specifically by the promoter that brought us there, whatever you do, don't give out any money to anybody, because that will create more of a problem. You know, more people will see that you gave a kid $1, and then all of a sudden you have 1,000 people trying to get in the car, you know.
wow.
So he said, you're better off, you know, ignoring it. And that was hard for me to do. How can you ignore that? You know, little kids banging on the window looking for anything.
Wow.
So it just, it broke my heart. So that's it. And, you know, we've all had our hearts broken from one thing or another. But to see it on that scale, it's nothing I could do or say to change anything there. You know, I don't even know. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. You know.
Man, I went to the DR. A buddy of mine had his family had a house there. You know, they were Dominican, and we were walking through the woods one day, and we came across a Haitian woman selling cashews, and she had 2 children with her. They were literally naked, playing with dirt and sticks, and like literally sticks and stones.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah, how do you handle that?
I was like, holy shit, don't ever complain about anything in your life ever again. Yeah, it was like, I mean, literally just playing children, like it could have been my kids. Yeah, right. You know, for if I had been born there, maybe, you know, for luck of the draw.
It could have been you as a kid.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, all that changes
that,
your perspective of how you see things and deal with things, and you know, but I just there's a lot of incidences like that in my travels where I saw things that were disheartening.
Yeah.
So I take all that I take it all in, I take it seriously, and it does at some level it changes me and the way I feel about things and how I deal with things. And that's always been in my life, even when I was a kid, you know, because I used to see my parents were very generous people, and they were always trying to help people. And there were people that were in jams or had tough times, you know. I saw, you know, as you grow up, I saw, you know, the heartbreak and losing family members, you know, all that. So all that has impact in your life. And you could either blow it off and just say la vie or not care, or you can take it and put it internally and ponder it and let it affect how you are as a person. So I chose that path.
That's good. Thank you, man. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Maybe another tough question. What do you like most about yourself?
Oh, God. But that, you know, I mean, okay. That's a tough one to answer. I'd have to let someone else answer.
What would your wife say she likes most about you?
She might say that I'm generous, and that all comes down from my parents. So I have no problems with sharing stuff or helping people. You know? And I got that from my mom and dad. They spent their whole life trying to help people, whether it was family, friends, or even strangers, you know.
It's really cool to grow up in an environment like that. That's nice.
Yeah. So I learned that from them. And I don't even think about it. It's just something that's part of my DNA.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Any hobbies outside of music?
Well, I used to have a lot more hobbies. Lately, it's been more workaholic kind of thing. But I used to like to play hoops, you know, go into a gym, or I'm too old and beat up for that. So I could play maybe a good game of horse. That's about it. You know, I like, if there is a hobby that I like going to museums. And I don't do that enough, but I love doing that. I like spending a day looking at paintings or sculpture, photographs, you know, whatever, installments, you know, that are, might be there, you know. Sometimes it's like projected images and things. Not long ago, my brother came out to visit from New York. This was pre-COVID. So it's just over a year ago he came out. And I took him to the LA County Museum. And so they had a lot of it was closed because they were renovating some stuff, but they had some cool things. So I always walk away from visiting a museum inspired about something, you know, because it's, you know, art is beautiful.
Yeah, for sure.
And when you see, even if you see modern new pieces, you find really cool stuff. And I love graphics and things like that because I'm involved in doing records as a producer. So another part of what I do, if necessary, is I help with finding images and.
That's cool.
Yeah. For example, I helped design the cover of Flying Spirits.
Oh, that's cool.
I also helped design the cover of Con Moto, the two records we are promoting here.
That's really cool.
I found the images and I worked with a graphics artist to, you know, put them all in there's certain measurements that you got to do for CDs or whatever. So I helped with all that. And I'm in touch with several very talented graphics artists here in town. One guy up in San Francisco and a couple of artists here in LA. You know, they do great work, and they also know about all the technical stuff, you know, for manufacturing.
Okay.
You have to have all the different templates and things like that, which I kind of know something about that, but I don't know all the serious details of what needs to be done. And that's what a graphics artist does, you know, that they put all that stuff in place, get it to the manufacturer makes the CDs, and then you buy whatever, 300,000 copies, and then you can sell them on your website or on the gig, which there has been no gigs for a year. But you can deliver some to CD Baby, or, you know, in my case, with Blue Canoe, you can send them over there. They have an online store, Blue Canoe Record Shop. You can buy stuff there. They get a bunch, so they can send stuff to CD Baby or to Amazon or Walmart or wherever.
Sure.
Sell hard copies. But that hard copies are starting to go away, so we're starting to look at that, and just
outside of merch, kind of art. Yeah.
But yeah, there's guys that, you know, like even with Jeff Lorber, you know, Concord put out this last record with Mike Stern. They manufactured some.
Favorite place you traveled? I know you've been all over the place.
Oh, well, that's anywhere in Scandinavia.
Really? What do you like about
my list. What was that?
What do you like about Scandinavia?
Well,
which is basically like what? Norway, Sweden, and Denmark?
Yeah, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland.
Finland, yes. Okay.
Yeah. All those places are fantastic. I spent a lot of time in all of those places, various cities, all over their country, north to south, east to west. I've produced stuff over there, done recording sessions. I've done a lot of live gigs, festivals. I'll also throw in Holland, because Holland is very close to Denmark and even Sweden. And I'm part Dutch. So
cool.
That's my last name. Haslip is a derivative of a Dutch name.
Okay.
And so actually, had my great-grandparents stayed married, my last name would have been Palm.
Palm.
Yeah, which is a Dutch name.
Interesting.
In fact, there's a famous Dutch beer named Palm.
Oh, is there?
Yeah. But they split up, and then my great-grandmother took her kids and took the kids and gave them her maiden name.
Her maiden name. Okay.
Which was Haslip, which had two A's. But when they came to, when the family came to New York, Ellis Island dropped one of the A's.
They did that all the time with loads of people.
Yeah. So it's kind of,
yeah. Toughest decision you had to make, or most difficult thing you've had to do?
Well, probably the toughest was making decisions for my daughter when she got really sick. I had to put that at number one. And there were a lot of decisions to make. So that's a whole list of things. And then maybe behind all that would be my decision to leave the Yellowjackets after 32 years. It took a lot of me thinking about stuff and, going over things that, maybe either bothered me or things that I really enjoyed, on both ends of the fence to kind of get a balance of what I should do. And it probably took me over a year to make that decision, but after a year plus, I made the decision. And because I knew that once I decided to do one or the other, and especially if I decided to leave, that was going to be probably a pretty permanent decision. And then it was like, okay, so what do I, after being in this band for close to 40 years, maybe, now what am I going to do? So that was all part of the thought process. And one of the things I thought about was, well, maybe I could produce more, and maybe I could stay home more too. Because for many years, I would travel maybe 9 months out of the year and then be home like 5 months out of the year, something like that.
Yeah, sure.
Or really 3 months out of the year. That's a lot less. So, it changed, from year to year, but I was on the road a lot. And I can't say I'm bummed out about that, because all that travel I did for all those years, I got to see so much.
Well, you've had such a rich, robust career. It's not like you traveled.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, it's not like you traveled around doing nothing. I mean, you lived. You lived.
Yeah. A funny thing was So somebody asked me not long ago, how many times have you been to Japan? And I had to think about it. And I realized it's probably over 60 times that I've been to Japan.
60?
Yeah. And I thought, gee, that's weird. Let me think about that. And I go, no, that's probably about right.
Amazing.
Yeah. Because I mean, even I remember one year I went back and forth from LA to Japan like 6 times in 1 year.
That's exhausting, man.
Yeah. And even my wife, you know, well, since I left the band now 8 years ago, my wife has constantly said, you look so much more rested now than you
Yeah,
used
I bet.
to. And I said, well, that's because I'm home more and I get to sleep in. And now with COVID, you know, I've been home a year. I've been the last time I traveled was I think it was like the end of January 2020.
Yeah.
And it was just a quick little trip with Lorber. I think we played somewhere like in Texas or something like that, and maybe even Virginia. A couple of gigs, came home. And then COVID started doing its thing. So I was scheduled to go out, do some dates, but they were in the Far East. So it was like, why am I flying to
the epicenter of hell? Yeah.
Where all this stuff is looming. So I decided I canceled. It bummed out the people I was going over there with, but I think they eventually did understand. They said, hey, in fact, it was one of the people said, man, now looking back at you canceling, I was a little tweaked about it, but you did the right thing.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And last question, biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that change has been intentional and how much has been natural part of aging?
The biggest, say that again?
Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years. Yeah.
I think I've always been kind of like this. So.
You haven't been the same. That's cool.
I don't think I change in the maybe the severity of how I approach things and the seriousness, but that's been happening for a long time.
That's not a personality change. Really.
No, not really. No. In fact, I have talked to some people that I went to high school with. I said, "You never change."
That's funny.
So I have to agree with that. I kind of feel pretty much the same, except I'm much older than I was in high school.
Hey, I don't look as good as you now. So I hope I look as good at your age. But if you're listening on audio, this guy looks like he's about 50 or maybe 50 years old. He's got a big thick head of hair. He's got it together. He's happening.
My doctor said that too, so I'll take it.
Yeah, man. Hell yeah. More importantly than me. Okay. I want to tell people what you got going on. Oh, do you ever regret giving up tuba? I timed that perfectly. Sorry, that wasn't intentional.
No, it's okay. I didn't play tuba for very long, and that was, I think my tuba playing was a result of my bad trumpet playing. So the band director, whenever there was a tuba part in a piece, he would say, Haslip, play the tuba on this. Because my trumpet playing was not great. So, but I could play the tuba. I had a thing to play it. Yeah. And you know what? It was fun.
Was it?
I have that giant, I had I think with one of the bands, I was able to use, because they had all these instruments that were available you could pick up. So I actually, a few times I remember playing one of the sousaphones, so that's
is that massive?
Actually get inside the thing.
Oh, yeah.
Around you, but a lot of times it was the big giant tuba with the bell is straight up. And you have the 3 valves here.
Okay. And
it just sits on your lap, but it feels powerful. It's a big horn, you know.
It does.
A lot of plumbing, as Bob Mincer would say.
A lot of plumbing.
Yeah. So those, I wish I could buy a tuba and practice again, but I think that's not going to happen.
Hey, any tuba vendors out there, I got your next sponsee. Let me tell people what you got going on. And before I do, thank you for everything, man. I can't tell, you're just, it's a great hang. Thank you. You're like a lovely human being, and I really appreciate you being so cool. Thank you. All right, Jimmy Haslip. First of all, you can go to his website. It has a lot of information. It's Jimmy Haslip Bass, HASLIP bass.com. I want to tell you about a bunch of stuff that Jimmy's got going on. First of all, as far as production goes, he's producing tons of records right now. If you are a band interested in working with Jimmy on the production side, send him an email. I'll give you that address, but send him some links and send him some information. Why do you think you guys might be a fit? What are you looking for? Whatever you want, but just give him enough information so that he can compile an intelligent answer to you, and then maybe move forward. And he's produced stuff not only in jazz, he's producing like a bluegrass band now, tons of rock stuff. And he's got the patience of a saint, if you haven't gathered that. So, and you can email him at Jim Haslip, JIMHASLIP @AOL.com. Second, Blue Canoe Records. You are the A&R guy now. What does that mean exactly?
Well, anything I produce, if I think fits the label, I can shop it there.
Okay.
And then it's a, back and forth with, Joseph Patrick Moore, who's the CEO. If he likes it, we could talk about it, and then we could see if the artist is happy with the deal. They can talk. There's all that goes on in negotiation.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of stuff that comes to me just through friends or acquaintances, where they'll say, like the Lyle Workman record, you're going to be talking
Yep.
to Lyle.
Uncommon Measures coming out soon.
Now that what came to me through Oz Noy, who I play with.
Okay.
And I'm in Oz Noy's trio. For the most part, I do a lot of live performance with them when there's touring. And Oz called me and said, "Hey, I have a friend, has a record. He would like to maybe talk to you about Blue Canoe." So I said, "Okay." And so he gave me his number. I called Lyle. We had a nice conversation. I asked him to send me anything he was comfortable with that's on the record. And I listened to it, and I thought it was outstanding. It was a beautiful record. So I called him back, and I said, "Well, look, I'd like to submit this to Blue Canoe and see if I can get you a distribution deal with them." And he said, "Great." So that's what I did. Joseph Patrick Moore loved it and signed them on.
Awesome.
And the rest is history. So I've done quite a few. I've probably submitted close to 40 projects to Blue Canoe over the last 3 years. And I know they've released at least 25, 26 of the things I've submitted, if not more.
Yeah. So I don't want to open up a can of worms here. If somebody has something they think is a fit for Blue Canoe, is there do you want them to contact you, or
Sure, they can
is there parameters?
Me. They can contact me via email. Then, include a phone number. I can call them back, and then
and include your music, obviously.
Yeah, maybe send me something, and I could see if it's it. Now, Blue Canoe is limited. I have to say that because it's a small what you call a boutique label. Yeah. It's not like Warner Brothers or Sony Music or something like that. So even if they like what you're doing there, they have to balance out their release situation, because they want to focus and do a good job on anything they release. So if there's too many things they come into them, they have to pass on stuff.
Sure.
Can't take everything. So there is some level of, like a government.
It's not a sure thing.
No, it's not a sure thing. And right now, I'll even tell you right now, they're pretty much scheduled through the end of the summer for releases.
Okay.
So I have a few other things I've A&R'd that are there, and I'm getting those in place, including this big band record that I'm finishing now. That's going to come out maybe later this year, but that's almost done. And I'm actually producing 7 records right now. So
that's it.
Some of those
you slacker.
Some of those 7 records I'm predicting will probably get picked up by Blue Canoe, but not all of them.
Yeah.
And I think all of these records could fit, but I think they just can't take them all. And fortunately, on my end, there's a couple that are already looking at releasing as an independently.
Okay. So it's not a worry. They're not.
No, I'm finishing up this saxophonist from Salt Lake City, Utah, killer saxophone player, and I got a lot of people on there that are guesting, really good bunch of musicians. But he's definitely looking at just releasing it on his own, and all I'm doing for him on my end as a producer is I'm hooking him up with a team for a promotion campaign for the release, which could take anywhere from 1 to 3 months.
Sure.
And so one person's like a radio person, and the other person is like press, like for reviews and interviews and stuff like that. So I've been putting together teams of people, 2 people, because I know budget isn't something that we have to keep an eye on. You can't spend like 50 grand on a promotion.
On press, yeah.
Yeah. So I keep it down to 2 people to focus on 2 important aspects of a release and a promotion campaign. And that would be to try to get it on the radio somewhere, as many places as possible, and try to get it reviewed and even try to get some interviews, like Lyle Workman.
Yeah. Right.
I hooked him up with a team of people, and I think he went with this team. I think he's made a slight change with the team on his own.
Yeah, because somebody reached out to me about it, and I said, Lyle, what's up, man? Like, are we not talking? Why don't you just like call me or whatever? He goes, oh my God. He goes, I told them I know you. He goes, they probably just didn't like,
Who was that? Can I ask you?
It was Karen. Karen. She says, oh, I have this record from Lyle.
Oh, Karen. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And Karen's at the label.
Yeah. And I was like, so I just said, hey man, what happened? Like, you'd call him, because he had told me about his record about 6 months ago. And he goes, oh man, he goes, I told her I knew you. She's probably just like enthusiastic.
She's just, she's happy.
Yeah.
They're very happy with the record. So beautiful record, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
anything?
No, but I've listened to a bunch of his other stuff. He's just a really smart musician.
This record has the London Symphony on it.
I remember when he was going over to Abbey Road to get that.
That's
done.
what he did.
Yeah. He did the music for Superbad. Do you know that movie? I mean, I remember watching that whenever it came out. I'm like, who the hell is Lyle Workman? Because I thought it was like Bootsy Collins, which it was, playing on there.
Yeah, Bootsy was playing bass. Yeah.
But I was like, who's Lyle Workman? And then when I met him all these years later, it was like so cool. I was like, oh, you're the dude. I remember you. So,
he's a killer.
Yeah, great player. I'm looking forward to digging into that record. Okay, so as far as A&R stuff and production, just email Jimmy. It's Jim Haslip, Haslip at AOL.com. Again, please be respectful of his time, and just, he's a professional and he's a great guy, but he's you're calling him for business. So put your business hat on. Okay. What else here we got? Also, if you're interested, Jimmy does a lot of work with not a lot. He's limited. If you are looking at getting some sort of lesson consultations, like you like how he does a certain thing on the bass, or you like his approach to something musically, and maybe you're a guitar player or a tuba player or whatever, and you want to work with him, same thing. Email him at jimhaslip at AOL.com. Again, just be thorough in your explanation so he can get his head around what you're needing and make a decision. Am I the guy for you or not? Maybe he can refer you to somebody else if he's not.
I'm in contact with a lot of great teachers. So,
oh my God,
you can always, swing anybody over to another teacher, and they can get what they need.
And let's see, we talked about the Bill DeCosimo record with Edgar Pagan. It's Bill DeCosimo. Is it COSIMO or CAS?
COS, Gaz, and
IMO.
God,
look up Edgar Pagan.
Yeah, Edgar Pagan, Bill DeCosimo. That's a capital D, small I, capital COS, and MO.
Okay, Bill DeCosimo and Edgar Pagan.
There is an I in there,
Cosimo. Okay, and the record's Con Moto, which is with motion. Jimmy played. You didn't play on that. He produced that record.
Actually, on Con Moto, I played some other things. I didn't play bass.
What'd you play?
A few keyboard
parts. Did you?
And an island instrument that's called a quattro. Which
I know what that is. It's a guitar.
It's a little mandolin.
Yeah.
Island mandolin. It's 5 strings, but the bottom strings are in octaves, and the bottom 3 strings are in octaves. The top 2 strings are in unison.
Right on, man. Very cool.
A little melodic instrument. Yeah.
I got to tell you, when we talked about, when you were talking about all the percussion instruments that your dad got you hip to, that's when you lit up. So we need to see you playing those on some record, man. Cause you had a bunch of good
percussion on that record too.
Okay. You had some good energy on there when you were talking about that.
I played some shakers and cowbell and, few other things. I can't remember now.
Did someone say we need more cowbell? I'd love to hear that, like in real life.
I think so.
Anything else I forgot? Is there anything else that I didn't let people know about?
No, I mean, if you want, go to Blue Canoe.
Yeah.
bluecanoe.com. There's a whole bunch of stuff there that I've done. But it's a nice label, and there's a lot of nice music there. Even stuff that I have nothing to do with. It's the label's got a nice roster and some beautiful stuff there. So you check that out. You can, if you're on Facebook, you can always visit me on Facebook. You can't write anything on my page, but you can scroll through there and see what I'm working on, because it's dedicated to everything I'm working on.
Awesome. Was it like Jimmy Haslip music or something? Or
it's just Jimmy Haslip. I think, gosh, I don't even know what my moniker is for Facebook.
Well, just look up Jimmy Haslip, the good-looking guy with all the hair, man. That's what you want to know. And are you on Instagram too?
No, my Instagram account got corrupted, so I'm trying to get that back up. But I do have an Instagram account. I just gotta fix it.
All right, man. Thank you for everything, man. You're a lovely guy. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for being so open and patient.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate our time together. Maybe we could do this again sometime.
It's a definite. Hang on one second. Let me say goodbye, and then you and I will wrap up. Thank you for everything. No, seriously. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Many thanks to Jimmy Haslip for all his time and patience and just being and for all his years of great musicianship, man, that I know I've enjoyed, and I bet a lot of people listening to this. Also, go to jimmyhaslipbass.com and, just participate and enjoy all the good stuff that Jimmy's done. Most important, especially nowadays, man, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar or your bass, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Brother, thank you for everything.
My pleasure.